alikunjaya gundi aliba watimayo siri musonyi woyo okuba we walungi wotya ensi yange endala we wagikwakulako oluyi nze ndi muntu wa mirembe nnyo naye ekizannyo embeera kwe kukubulwa nti nakugirako akakofiira bwe nkulooza ogamba siikese kusaba ojjukirenga nnyo luli olunaku lwaffe lwe twasisinkana
se nakugiramu akateeteeyi bwe nkulooza ogamba siikese kusaba ojjukirenga nnyo luli olunaku lwaffe kekulungula olunaku lulwaneeta n'okutuyana tokigaza kunzejukiza byewayogera nga byakanyanga kunnyonyogera togeza kwekuluntaza omutima gwange n'oguleetera okulunguka ddale. If I could change and love somebody else, somebody would be you. What? Onatakalala na nyonta kwe kumanya nti ze gwolota tengamba kyovola bugonda omuliro muze gubumbuja kalamata tejja ne bwetijja ze kwafunye nayitemuka
nakugirako akakofiira bwe nkulooza ogamba siikese kusaba ojjukirenga nnyo luli olunaku lwaffe lwe twasisinkana
se nakugiramu akateeteeyi bwe nkulooza ogamba siikese kusaba ojjukirenga nnyo luli olunaku lwaffe
simanyi bolinde koti zende bikandi ekyo kiriba kirwadde kirindeka ku ndiri ndikuwe mabutungu omwana teboleka sikububomi bw'omukwano era alikwenganga alimanya olwa alimanya kanfamu.
Wake up, Africa. Peter Ndoro and Asanda Beda are here to help you rise.
November. And that means literally the year 2025. It has left us behind. We need to be looking forward to 2026 already now. Well, what we're looking forward to in covering on the show, we talk Cameroon, of course, the incumbent president Paul Biya there, 92-year-old, having won re-election. Now, the African Union Commission has expressed their sentiments in terms of that win, and they've congratulated the president, Paul Biya, but also on the country. Issa Chiroma, the opposition leader there, is facing legal charges. He's being accused of inciting violence after the election results were given. 4 people having been killed. Maybe that number will rise as the day progresses. We don't know. We'll see in terms of those stories and more, of course, coming up on Rise and Shine. Let's get to our news now. It's 6:01.
SABC News. The African Perspective.
Thank you, Asanda, and good morning. With the news at 6 o'clock, I'm Matapala Mahabe. Police in Tanzania's main city, Dar es Salaam, have fired tear gas to disperse opposition supporters protesting against the general elections which took place yesterday. Several people have been injured in the confrontation after groups of protesters gathered along major highways to demand electoral reforms and free political activity. Protesters lit fires on roads, vandalized buses, and caused extensive damage to bus terminals and other public infrastructure. President Samia Suluhu Hulu Hassan is expected to win following the disqualification of the leading opposition candidates. And the spokesperson of the Ambazonia in South Africa, Cletus Safri, has expressed disappointment over the recent Cameroon election results. This comes after President Paul Biya, who has led the country for over 4 decades, secured another 7-year mandate. Following the announcement on Monday, there has since been clashes between security forces and opposition supporters who allege voter intimidation and rigging, which the government has since dismissed. Safri has come out to explain the current political atmosphere in the country.
It is a very tense political atmosphere in Cameroon as we speak. From the last time I checked last night, more than 15 young people, women included, have been shot dead with live ammunition. The people of Cameroon are tired of the regime.
And Captain Barry Kruger of South Africa's Directorate for Priority Crime Investigation, the Hawks, has told the Madlanga Commission that Brigadier Lesiba Mokoena instructed him to verify the legitimacy of an operation at the home of murder suspect Katiso KT Molefe in Sandhurst, north of Johannesburg. Kruger says Mokoena insisted he immediately go there, despite explaining that he was in another city. Previous witnesses at the commission have accused the Hawks of attempting to interfere with the police operations during Molefe's arrest. Kruger was giving testimony before the Madlanga Commission.
I then got a phone call from my Brigadier Mokoena informing me that I had to go to an address I did not know, 137 Empire Place in Sandhurst in Johannesburg, and to verify if there was a legitimate police operation underway there, as people were saying that they are from the Hawks, and it was not our team involved there.
The U.S. Embassy in Mali has urged all American citizens to leave the country immediately, warning of rising terror threats and a worsening fuel crisis caused by a jihadi blockade. Mali has been experiencing a fuel crisis for weeks caused by armed groups blocking routes used by fuel tankers, particularly affecting Bamako. The country suspended schools and universities nationwide last week due to the several fuel scarcity, Tuto Ngobeni reports.
The embassy announced last Friday that non-essential diplomatic staff and their families would leave Mali amid the worsening fuel shortage and growing security concerns. It said it could not provide routine or emergency consular services outside Bamako and noted a travel advisory for Mali remains in effect. The warning also urged travelers to Mali to contact the embassy in case of an emergency. The embassy urged Americans to avoid demonstrations and roadblocks, remain vigilant, keep a low profile, stay aware of the surroundings, maintain communication and accessible travel documents.
Messages in a bottle written by 2 Australian soldiers have turned up more than a century later on the southwestern coast. The messages turned out to be cheerful letters written in pencil by 2 young men on their way to join the First World War in 1916. They were found by Deborah Brown and her family as they were picking litter on Walton Beach.
They were picking up rubbish. Peter was tying some rubbish on the front of the quad bike to take back to the bins, and Felicity saw a bottle floating around in the shoreline, and she picked it up and said, "Oh, Dad, this bottle's pretty cool. It's very thick glass and it's got messages in it. We better take it home."
For any news stories you'd like to share with us, please send an email to newsroom@channelafrica.co.za or call us on +2711 714 4459. For Channel Africa News, I am Matapala Mahabe.
SABC News. The African Perspective.
In our sports headline, Laura Vorvaart and Marizanne Kapp guided the Proteas women into the final World Cup. And 12 nations have booked their places at the WAFCON Morocco 2026. I'll be back with these and other stories at the bottom of the hour.
New day, new stories. Start your morning right with Rise and Shine on Channel Africa.
Let's catch you up now with some of the stories you may have missed as we start this new day here on Rise and Shine. This amount of, or this this amount of news is compiled for us by our researchers, our reporters, as well as our team of editors. And it also serves as a throw forward into what we can expect to develop in the new day in Newswise. And we call this segment the Africa Roundup. It comes after the 6 a.m. news here on Channel Africa. So today we start with the UN Refugee Agency, which has voiced serious concern over the escalating conflict in Al Fasher, the capital of Sudan's North Darfur region, which has forced thousands to flee to Tawila. Jacqueline Wilma Parlevit, head of UNHCR's sub-office in Sudan, described the reports from the ground as horrendous and horrific.
Over the past week alone, 26,000 new arrivals have been registered, have been received in Tawila. The stories that we hear through my colleagues that are on the ground in Tawila providing protection services are horrendous and horrific. Our new arrivals report of widespread ethnically and politically motivated killing, indiscriminate violence affecting in particularly the most vulnerable. We have accounts of people with disabilities who were executed, who were killed as they were unable to flee. But we also hear people that are trying to leave the city and manage to get out of the city, but on the way they're caught up and they are also being shot.
The UN General Assembly has overwhelmingly condemned the U.S. economic embargo on Cuba for the 33rd consecutive year. In the 193-member world body, 165 voted in favor, 7 against, with 12 abstentions. Ghana's representative spoke at the Assembly, calling for an end to the decades-long embargo.
Mr. President, few issues before this Assembly speak as powerfully to our shared conscience as the continuing economic, commercial and financial embargo imposed on the Republic of Cuba. For more than 6 decades, this measure has stood as a moral, legal and economic contradiction to the principles enshrined in the Charter of the United Nations, namely the sovereign equality, non-interference and the right of all peoples to pursue their own development in dignity and peace. Ghana has consistently and resolutely advocated for an end to the embargo because we believe that no nation should be denied the opportunity to participate fully and freely in global trade, nor deprived of the means to uplift the well-being of its citizens.
South African President Cyril Ramaphosa has met his Swiss counterpart, Karen Keller-Sutter, in Bern, praising Switzerland's support for South Africa's inclusive growth amid global challenges. The visit is the 4th stop on his diplomatic tour to strengthen trade and investment, following trips to Vietnam, Indonesia and Malaysia, where he received an honorary doctorate.
Yesterday in Neuchâtel, sacred artifacts of the Nkuna royal family began their journey home after more than a century. More than pieces in a museum, these objects in many ways carry the memory of generations and the identity of a people. This act of repatriation speaks to who we are, both Switzerland and South Africa. It speaks to our shared belief that dialogue can heal what conflict has broken.
Africa continues to lag behind in infrastructure development, according to discussions at the Luanda Summit on financing for infrastructure development in Angola. The summit is exploring innovative ways to mobilize domestic resources and generate the capital needed for the continent's infrastructure. Ditaba Tsotetsi reports from Luanda.
The AU Commission Chairperson, Mahmoud Ali Yusuf, has called on the private sector on the continent to come on board and invest in infrastructure development to address unequal access to basic needs.
A structured mobilization of the African private sector as a central actor of transformation, a coordinated and substantial access to climate financing, notably through the Alliance for Green Infrastructure Africa, which could mobilize more than $500 million in its first phase. Yes, indeed, what we are building here are not roads and bridges. We are building an Africa that is connected, confident, sovereign, capable of asserting itself as a pole of balance and creativity in the world to come.
The African Export-Import Bank has marked the end of Professor Benedict Oki Orama's tenure as president and chairman of the board of directors with a legacy conference in Cairo. Here's Africa's business magnate Aliko Dangote speaking on the sidelines of this conference.
It's really a very great event. You know, one of the largest clients of Afrexim Bank. So I just, I had no choice but to be here. And I think, it's a great event. It is a good transition where Professor Rama is handing over to Dr. Elombi. It's a very, very good set. And I believe, the bank will go to the next level.
An online tool that enabled Kenyans to participate in public consultations on a controversial finance bill has earned Rose Njeri a place among 4 Africans on Time magazine's Time 100 Next list for 2025.
The bill sparked protests across the country and a new wave of digital activism led by tech-savvy young people.
So something, to be honest, awakened after the 2024 finance protests. And I kept it going. And in that way, I also started thinking, what can I do in my own personal capacity? So I started building these tools.
The mother of 2 was arrested and detained after sharing a link to a website that flagged clauses in a bill she said would increase the cost of living. The site also enabled people to email Parliament, calling for the bill to be withdrawn. The activist is concerned that a proposal to amend tax procedures, which allows authorities to access personal data without a court order, could undermine privacy rights. Despite the risks, Njeri remains committed to using technology to drive change.
And that's how we come to the end of this day's edition of the Africa Roundup. We'll do this again tomorrow, Friday, after the 6 a.m. news. And then later, or not that late, just after the short break, we'll delve deeper into some of those stories touched as well as other stories as we zoom into what's happening in the Central African region of our continent. We get analysis there from geopolitical analyst Erin Ngambi.
Mix Vibration sur Channel Africa. Qu'est-ce qui vous a amené à dire ça? Est-ce que vous avez observé un certain nombre d'événements dans la vie? Est-ce que c'était par rapport à une expérience? Est-ce que vous avez rencontré des choses qui vous ont dit il faut de la patience, comme ça les choses vont venir au bon moment et le bon Dieu pourra peut-être me visiter?
Oui, c'était justement un conseil que le Seigneur m'a fait inspirer pour donner à son peuple, parce qu'il y a la plupart des gens, pendant que Dieu bénit les autres, ils pensent que Dieu les a oubliés, et pendant que Dieu ouvre pour les autres, ils pensent que peut-être Dieu n'a pas pu écouter leurs prières. Alors, ce n'est pas le cas. Alors, Dieu bénit tout un chacun de nous avec son temps. Donc, le temps de Dieu est toujours le meilleur dans la vie de tout un chacun de nous.
Mix Vibration, tous les dimanches, de 18h à 19h, temps universel.
Download the SABC app and take Channel Africa with you everywhere you go. AUSISA, the Association of Water and Sanitation Institution of South Africa, is a platform uniting Africa's water professionals. This November, Africa leads the conversation on water and sanitation. Join global and African leaders at the AUSISA Africa and Global South Dialogue 2025 from the 9th till the 12th of November at the Emperor's Palace, Johannesburg. From policy innovation, this is where action meets collaboration for a water-secure future. Register today at ausisa-watersan-dialogue.org or follow at AUSISA on social media. AUSISA, working together for sustainable water and sanitation security in Africa. Mornings made better with Peter and Asanda on Rise and Shine, weekdays 6 till 9 Central African Time on Channel Africa.
Now we update you on some stories making headlines in and around the Central African region, specifically of our continent, and we get analysis as we get this chat with geopolitical analyst Erin Ngambi, who joins us on Thursdays here on Rise and Shine. Erin, good morning to you. How are you?
I'm fine, thank you. Good morning to you, Asanda, and good morning to our listeners. Happy Friday Eve.
Happy Friday Eve, and also happy, what do you call, month-end Eve. Tomorrow is the last day of October. We enter November. 2025 is literally behind us.
Yeah, it's unbelievable. Time flies.
Absolutely. Well, I don't know if Cameroon feels like time flies because it doesn't feel like anything has changed in terms of the leadership of that country. President Paul Biya, the incumbent, winning another eighth or getting elected into an eighth term in office as president. The 92-year-old now receiving congratulations from the African Union Commission. What do you make of this? The sentiments of the African Union Commission in terms of congratulating President Paul Biya being president again in Cameroon?
A few years ago, Julius Malema made a famous statement where he called the African Union as a club of these old men, old madalas that just look out for their own interests. I think it feels like that if you're in Cameroon right now, or if you are a resident or citizen of Cameroon. I think that the elections in Cameroon was nothing but a sham election. There were a lot of irregularities and issues of violence that were recorded and manipulation of the elections. But nonetheless, it was predictable that the 92-year-old man would come back and return to power. But it is disappointing to see Mohamed Yusuf, the African Union chairperson, be quick to be able to congratulate the incumbent. And then, interestingly, he goes on to cite that, of course, there was some violence and issues post the election, but this needs to be dealt with. The reason why there's violence and people on the streets is because people do not approve of the results of that election. So it is very disappointing to see that the African Union takes a step like that.
So why congratulate while also acknowledging that there is dissent? I mean, there is a crackdown on dissenting voices and there's violence. Is that not in contradiction of the two things in contradiction that the African Union Commission chair was voicing?
Yes, it's actually contradiction in terms because if you look at if you read the statement that was issued by him, you will see that he immediately acknowledges that there are issues around these results, but then he goes on to say we need both parties to work together, meaning the incumbent and also the opposition who has claimed that he has won the election. So remember these Isa Chiroma, who has claimed that he has won the elections. And so there's a standoff. In fact, this opposition has a stronghold up in the north. Therefore, you see that the police is cracking down on protest and dissent up in the north in his stronghold. And the African Union, all they could do is call for some sort of reconciliation and working together for national unity between the two factions, instead of actually outrightly calling the elections for what it was and maybe even demanding that there should be a runoff. But instead they were quick to congratulate the incumbent and then begin basically just wishy-washing, talking about how the country should now come together after the elections.
Then, as you say, Issa Chiroma, the opposition party leader there, is now facing legal charges and he's accused of having incited violence after the election results were made public in Cameroon. Can these legal accusations or legal charges stand?
Minister of Interior, Paul Atangaji, has made it very clear that Issa Chiroma will face a legal, proceedings because he claimed prematurely that he is the elected next president of Cameroon. Now, he argues that, in fact, in the electoral code, it's nothing that he has done wrong because the electoral code does provide for the opposition or the parties that are participating in the elections to actually tally the votes and be able to see. So they followed every polling station to see and added up the numbers to see if the incumbent was leading, or in fact, Issa was leading. And so this is where Issa claims that with all the results that they did, parallel voter tabulation, they were leading by 50, I think it's 54%. And Paul Biya was behind by 35%. But of course, because the Electoral Commission, the Constitutional Council has declared Paul Biya as the president, therefore Issa is on the wrong side. And yes, this could amount to all sorts of charges. In fact, even treason will be one of the charges if Issa is not careful.
Let's talk matters of economics now. Exxon, the oil giant, is expanding its operations. It wants to enter Gabon as far as its exploration efforts are concerned. It's already in operation in Nigeria and I believe, is it Mauritius? So what do you make of this interest into Gabon?
Well, Gabon, he's going through a transition. Right now, there's a desperate need for the new president in Gabon to deliver to the expectations of the people. Therefore, I think that he's doing everything that he can to be able to revamp the economy and be able to get the country moving forward. This is the motivation behind this. But the only problem is that such multilateral corporations such as ExxonMobil, you find that usually they do invest in these countries, but also it comes at a huge cost because most of the returns end up going to these companies, and yet the people do not benefit 100% from the resources that the country owns. So this is something that we'll have to see, but I see that this is a desperate move from the new president to be able to set Gabon onto a different path, and we hope that it works economically.
And as much as it can work economically, the exploration of oil in Gabon will involve seismic surveys. These kinds of things have received criticism in previous times and in previous places from environmentalists. Do you foresee that there could be a challenge there as well in terms of protest action from environmental groups?
Yeah, and the only reason why he has a pass now, president has a pass now, is because he's a little bit popular. You know, he's a new face, a new guy on the block after the country being ruled for over 50 years by the Bongo family. So I think that people are trying to give him a benefit of a doubt, but not until these efforts begin to be detrimental to the economy, to the environment, not until these efforts begin to show that they're not really trickling down to uplift the living standards of the people, then you will see the civil society and other people be able to oppose the government. But I think that right now the dissent is not so much because the people want to give him a benefit of a doubt.
Let's go to the Democratic Republic of Congo now. African banks are eyeing the country. Why is that?
Well, it seems like the Congo has great potential to make a lot of money for the banking sector. I think that statistics show that 1 in 10 people in the Congo actually has a bank account. So you can see that there's a need for these banks to go in. I understand one of them is ABSA that is trying to get a foothold in the Congo. But not only that, we know the Congo for what it's famous for. It's all the mineral wealth and the natural resources that it has. And so at the backdrop of that, the banking sector thinks that they will make a lot of money going to go in there and be able to revolutionize the system, as it may be.
What challenges could this pose in terms of resistance from the country, the DRC?
Well, I think one of the challenges could just be technological issues. But other than that, I think that it looks like the government in the DR Congo are on board to be able to welcome these banks to come in. There are some few banks that are operating right now, and most of them are local banks. And so you find that they're not as efficient as you would imagine. But these are some of the banks that perhaps will have problems with international bankers coming in. Already there are a few banks from the region, including Rwanda, that have some sort of partnership with local banks and providing these services. But now it looks like this is an influx. This is a floodgate that has been opened for these banks to go into the Congo and be able to establish themselves. And I think that it's because they've seen that it's lucrative and it's going to be very profitable in the long run.
Apart from that, what does this speak in terms of the competition that is going to pose within the banking sector, not just in the Democratic Republic of the Congo, but the region in general, in terms of whether or not regulations are in place and they are tightened to ensure that all abide by the rules?
That is always a challenge. I think that it is difficult to uh, implement some of the regulations. And the reason for that is because you have some countries that do not have strict regulations on certain sectors, and while the other countries do. For example, if you look at ABSA and its operations in South Africa, this is probably very different from the way ABSA operates in Zambia or in other countries in the region. So I think that this has always been the challenge, but this is entirely up to the government of the Democratic Republic of Congo to be able to make sure that even though these international bankers are coming in, the country is able to revitalize, they're able to equip their own local banks and be able to make them competitive. Otherwise, if they don't do that, they're going to have what other countries have in the region. We have countries that actually have banks that none of them, maybe one or two, are owned by the local people. All the rest of the banks are actually international corporations that have come in. And a classic case is Zambia, for example. We only have Zambia National Commercial Bank as a bank that is owned by the Zambian, partly by the Zambian government, and another small bank. But all the other banks are all from outside. And therefore, it means that all the profits and all the investments that these banks bring in and the profits go to, as dividends are paid out to the owners of these banks. So that's one way that the Congo will lose revenue if they do not, in fact, bail out or, in fact, prop up the local banks.
Should be targeting the capital, Kinshasa, or are the other cities that could pose as great opportunities for business growth and in the banking sector specifically?
For now, all of them are coming into Kinshasa, being the capital, as well as Lubumbashi, which is the second largest city in the Congo. And it makes sense because whenever you go into a country to establish business, you look at this, the center of strengths. You look at the focal points. You begin in these cities and then you grow outwardly. I wouldn't be surprised that in the next year or two, the same banks such as ABSA will not only be in Kinshasa and Lubumbashi, but to be in all the parts of the country. And maybe even go as far as the eastern part of the Democratic Republic of Congo, which is a conflicted region.
All right, we'll leave it there for today, Aaron. Always great getting an update from you and analysis. We'll do this again next week, Thursday. You do have a great weekend.
Yeah, you too, Asanda.
Thanks. Aaron Ngambi is our geopolitical analyst joining us on Thursdays here on Rise and Shine to bring us up to speed with some stories you need to get into the know, or maybe you already know them, you want a different perspective on those stories that are happening in the Central African region of the continent. It's 6:30 Central African time. Let's get our news headlines now. Here's Matapelo.
SABC News. Headlines. The African Perspective.
Thank you, Asanda. Headlines this hour. Authorities in Tanzania have declared a curfew in the commercial capital Dar es Salaam after a tense election day. Several people were injured in clashes between the demonstrators and police. The police curfew started at 6 p.m. local time, and the U.S. Embassy has advised American government personnel to take shelter at their residences. And the UN's health agency has reported the Rapid Support Forces militia has killed hundreds of civilians at a hospital in El Shafir, Sudan, following its capture. The hospital was transformed into a human slaughterhouse, and the Sudan's Doctors Network accused the RSF of kidnapping 6 medics and demanding ransoms over $150,000 for their release. And 4 men have gone on a trial in France after being accused of taking part in what prosecutors believe was a Russian attempt to destabilize the country. More details on these and other stories at top of the hour.
SABC News. Headlines. The African Perspective.
Thanks there to Matapelo Mahape, of course, back at 7 o'clock with your full news update as promised. Right now, though, here is Fikile Lingwadi. He brings us our first full sports update for this Thursday morning.
Sports on Channel Africa. The African perspective.
Good morning, Asanda. We begin with the cricket news. Proteas women batter Laura Volvart played one of the all-time great ODI innings to guide the Proteas women into the ICC Women's World Cup final after a comprehensive 125-run victory against England. The Proteas captain struck a majestic 169 of 143 balls to help a side to a total of 319 for 7 before Marizanne Kapp then took career best figures of 5 for 20 as England were bowled out for 194. After being put into bed, Proteas opening pair of Volvart and Tasmin Bretts put on a partnership of 116. It would have settled any nerves in the dressing room after they were bowled out for just 69 against England in their opening match of the tournament. The Proteas all-rounder cleaned up Charlie Dean and Sophia Dunkley to complete her second 5-wicket haul in her ODI career. On to football news, with South Africa having secured qualification to the 2026 WAFCON in Morocco, Captain Refilwe Jane says that the aim is to try and dethrone Nigeria as defending champions and put their hands back on the WAFCON trophy. Banyana defeated DR Congo 1-0 in the second leg qualifier on Tuesday, south of Johannesburg, winning by 2-1 on aggregate to end the ticket to the continental showpiece.
Yes, the initial plan was to first qualify, and obviously the second one is to qualify for the World Cup, and the other one is to try and win the trophy again. We know that it's not going to be easy. It's going to be a difficult tournament, and it's not easy playing African teams anymore. So no team is just a walk in the park. So we need to get good preparation leading to the WAFCON.
And 12 nations have booked their places at the Total Energies CAF Women's Africa Cup of Nations Morocco 2026 after 2 qualifying rounds. Host Morocco, runners-up at the last 2 editions, will again look to turn fervent home support into silverware. The competition will be fierce. 10-time champions Nigeria remain the team to beat. The Super Falcons are targeting an 11th title to underline their long-standing dominance of the continent. Meanwhile, Kenya and Burkina Faso, returning after spells away, will be eager to prove they belong in this select field. Around them, several rising teams continue their upward curve. Senegal, Algeria, Tanzania qualified with authority extending trajectories seen in recent seasons. And the first T20 between Australia and India was washed out by the Canberra rain, with the Tories able to bat for less than half of their allocated tally of over for a total of 97 for 1. Shubman Gill was 37 not out, and skipper Surya Kumar Yadav unbeaten on 39 when the first clash in a 5-match series was stopped for the second and final time after 9.4 overs. For any sports stories you'd like to share with us, please send an email to newsroom@channelafrica.co.za or call us on +2711 714 4459. This is Channel Africa Sport with me, Fidel Nwati.
Sports on Channel Africa. The African perspective.
Você é fluente em português? É apaixonado por rádio e quer trabalhar na África do Sul? Você tem documentos que o qualificam para trabalhar na África do Sul? Nesse caso, podemos ter uma oportunidade para você trabalhar no Canal África. Envie seu currículo e demonstração para Canal África @ newsroom@channelafrica.co.za. Lembre-se, se você não receber alguma resposta nossa em 14 dias, isso significa que você não foi selecionado. Canal África, a perspectiva africana.
Conversations are happening, and Channel Africa is at the heart of them. We tell the African story with clarity, pride, and purpose, reaching audiences that matter to your brand. Partner with us and connect your business with listeners across borders in multiple languages and markets. For partnership opportunities, sponsorship, or sales, email us at partnership@channelafrica.co.za. Channel Africa, the African perspective.
Now let's get updated with what's happening in the world of economics as we say good morning to Tabiso Lehugo. He's got our business news.
Business news on Channel Africa. The African perspective.
Thanks, Asanda, and good morning.
Egypt's Kamet Industry Group has signed a memorandum of understanding with the Emirati Chinese Al-Khala Red Flag Group to build 3 industrial projects in the Suez Canal economic zones and in Soka Industrial Zone. The total expected investment cost for the 3 plant projects under this cooperation is estimated at around $3.5 billion. The SC Zone's aggressive modernization and investment drives signal Egypt's emergence as a serious contender in the logistics and manufacturing sectors. Liberia has replaced its mining minister and top mining regulator, the Office of President Joseph Boakai announced. This as the West African nation and iron ore producer pursues talks in Washington on investments in its critical mineral sector. The new minister, Matenoke Atingban, served as deputy minister under former President Alan Johnson Sirleaf. The presidency says that the decision to appoint him in place of the previous minister Wilmot J. Paye is part of moves to improve governance and efficiency. The changes come as Liberia seeks to attract foreign investment into its mining industry, which recently identified deposits of lithium, cobalt, manganese, and rare earths, minerals vital for electric vehicle and renewable energy technologies. The senior management for the South African Broadcasting Corporation continues to express the needs for a viable funding model for the public broadcaster in order to have financial stability. The executive and the board of the SABC appeared before the Standing Committee on Appropriations in Parliament to discuss its funding model. CEO Nomsa Chabedi says that the organization is far behind compared to other public broadcasters in the world that are being funded mainly by the public money. South African jewellery designer Nihal Shah has secured a notable achievement, securing second place in the professional category of the prestigious Plat Africa 2025 New Horizons competition. Representing the bespoke firm Vijay Shah Concepts, the award, one of many in his cabinet, celebrates his innovation and excellence in platinum craftsmanship, placing him among the top professionals in the field. Shah says that the award serves as a vital platform for showcasing the exceptional talent and bright future of local platinum jewellery design.
So every year, Plat Africa hands out a different brief. So every year, the competition is completely different to the previous year. So this year, my design hook for the competition draws inspiration from the ethereal realm of the virtual star. So it's part of the theme. And, I created a ring that is modern, something sci-fi, something that exists in the year 3000 sort of thing. I created a piece that transcends the modern age. So the piece that I created this year is very bold, has a bright, striking blue color. It looks like something that has basically come off one of these Star Trek ships or one of these Star Wars ships.
The chief executive of Malaysia's state power utility Tenaga Nasional says Malaysia will focus on a mix of solar and gas-fired power generation as it shifts away from coal. The country is expected to add 6 to 8 gigawatts of gas-fired capacity and more than double its renewable capacity of 9 gigawatts as it looks to cut dependence on coal from 2029. Nasional says that the renewable source will help keep costs down. The Southeast Asian nation of over 35 million people has been cranking up its coal-fired power fleet to keep electricity costs low, but plans to boost the use of natural gas, which is more flexible, and solar, which is cheaper. $1 in Nigeria is trading at 1,452 naira. In Botswana, it's at 13.87, Kenya 128 shilling 372, and Zambia 21 kwacha 94. The BRICS countries in Brazil, the dollar there will cost you 5.35. Russia 79 rubles 55, India 88 rupees 22, China 71.9, and in South Africa the dollar will cost you 17 rand 13 cents. $1 is trading at 75 pence to the British pound and 85 to the euro. Gold is trading at $3,938 and platinum at $1,586 per ounce. Brent crude oil is at $64.55 a barrel. For any business stories you would like to share with us, please send us an email to newsroom@channelafrica.co.za or call us on +2711 714 4459. For Channel Africa Business in Johannesburg, I'm Tabisolo Hoko.
Business news on Channel Africa. The African perspective. G20 in Africa, exclusive to Channel Africa.
Well, we bring you G20 facts every day here on Rise and Shine, and today is no different. So here's our G20 fact for this 30th of October. Did you know the African Union and African countries laid the groundwork through regional strategies and initiatives to promote economic growth and investment on the African continent, such as the AU's Agenda 2063, the Addis Tax Initiative, as well as the Programme for Infrastructure Development in Africa, or PIDA. This as South Africa becomes the first African country to host the G20 summit. And that's our G20 fact for this morning.
G20 in Africa, exclusive to Channel Africa, championing Africa through solidarity, equality, and sustainability.
South Africans living abroad may soon spend less time waiting for passports and other documents. Home Affairs Minister Dr. Leon Schreiber has launched a new doorstep delivery service in New York in partnership with VFS Global, allowing citizens in certain countries to receive their documents by courier rather than collecting them in person. Sherwin Bryce Peace has more.
A symbolic cutting of the ribbon in New York as South Africa's Department of Home Affairs launches its latest dedicated service centre with VFS that could speed up the processing and delivery of key documents to South African citizens living in the United States. Listen to Minister Dr. Leon Schreiber.
This VFS facility will, as I said initially, manage the application processing of adult and minor passports, both for new passports and renewals. It will also manage birth registration applications, and the goal we've set is to have turnaround times of 5 to 6 weeks instead of the 6 or 12 months that came before. And that will be particularly achievable once we have rolled out the live capture that I mentioned. So in the next 6 months, I think we should see us meeting that standard consistently.
South Africa has 3 missions in the United States providing consular services to its citizens in all 50 states. The New York Consulate General, for example, provides those services to some 15 states as far south as Tennessee and as far north as Vermont, hundreds of kilometers away. The partnership with VFS is expected to bridge that gap between the South African government and its citizens living abroad, as Schreiber explained.
We are not stopping with only New York and Washington. And I want to thank some of the colleagues for the engagement on this over the last few weeks. So while those 2 locations are opening now and introducing home delivery from the 1st of November, in January we will also launch the same service in Los Angeles, Atlanta, Chicago, Houston, and Miami. So you are going to have coverage and access to services here in the US like you've never seen before. We've had the same principle in massive countries like Australia, where we also added 1 or 2 additional locations so that you don't have to fly from the West Coast to the East Coast for these applications.
VFS indicating that their role will be to help execute the vision of Home Affairs and to ease the historic frustrations associated with applying for enabling documents abroad. VFS Global's head of North America, Amit Kumar Sharma.
What we are launching here in the US is special. It's special from the perspective, if you look at it from the diaspora perspective, one of the major things when somebody lives abroad, and many of us, including myself, when we live abroad, your identity is in the documents. And it's very important that you have those documents with you, and whenever they expire or you need to renew them, you have easy access to the government premise. The government makes the process for you that works easily, comfortably, and convenient, And I'm so glad to say that South Africa government is one of the leading government in the world who is doing all this.
Schreiber said rolling out these services in countries across the world was reflective of the modernizing vision and journey of his department.
It certainly symbolizes that your government takes you seriously, that we respect you, and that we recognize, most fundamentally, that your identity as a South African doesn't cease when you exit the country, especially in today's globalized world. There are many countries who have made huge gains out of having a diaspora that is engaged. Many people cycle between working abroad and coming back, bringing skills into the economy, and acting really as ambassadors for South Africa abroad. And I think it really starts with government. The responsibility is on us to give you something to work with, to give you a sense of pride in your identity, that you have your passport with you, and that you know that it is really a country that is moving in the right direction.
Minister Schreiber also indicated that once they're comfortable with the doorstep delivery with smaller groups of citizens living abroad, they plan to scale up this service to all South Africans, including through their new digital partnership model with the banking sector. I'm Sherwin Bryce-Pease in New York.
As we talk of visa issues, 91-year-old Nigerian Nobel laureate Wole Soyinka has been denied entry into the United States after his visa was unexpectedly cancelled. The U.S. government revoked the non-immigrant visa that had been issued to the celebrated author last year, citing new information obtained after the approval. Wutlale Pele has the details.
Nigeria's most acclaimed literary figure, Wole Soyinka, made the announcement in Lagos, telling reporters he had been officially banned from entering the United States. The 91-year-old Nobel Prize winner said the U.S. consulate had instructed him to submit his passport for physical cancellation of his visa.
It's necessary for me to give this press conference so that people in the States who are expecting me for this event or that event or were thinking of it, not to waste their time. I have no visa. I am banned, obviously, from the United States. And if you want to see me, you know where to find me.
Soyinka, who won the Nobel Peace Prize for Literature in 1986, has had a long-standing academic tie with several U.S. universities since the mid-1990s. He quipped that he was unaware of any offense that might justify the revocation.
The possible catalogue of my crimes, only one conviction, which I signed guilty at the airport for carrying a few papers. Otherwise, I don't know what else I could have done.
The revocation comes nearly a decade after Soyinka publicly tore up his U.S. green card in protest over Donald Trump's election in 2016. The U.S. Embassy has yet to comment on the reasons behind the visa cancellation. I'm Batali Pele, SABC News.
The UN Special Rapporteur on the occupied Palestinian territories, Francesca Albanese, has called for increased interfaith dialogue across Europe to counter rising anti-Islam sentiment, warning that Israel is using religion to justify its oppression of Palestinians. Speaking at a major dialogue at the University of the Western Cape in South Africa, Albanese said the Israeli regime continues to exploit religion to legitimize its occupation and human rights abuses in Gaza and the West Bank. The event was hosted by the university's rectorate in partnership with the Nelson Mandela Foundation and the Desmond Tutu Center for Religion and Social Justice. Corbin August reports.
The United Nations Special Rapporteur on the occupied Palestinian territories, Francesca Albanese, says she is concerned about the rise of anti-Islam movements in Europe, which are being used by Israel to justify gross human rights violations in Palestine. Albanese was speaking during a critical dialogue held at the University of the Western Cape. She says the Israeli regime is continuing to use the anti-Islam sentiment which is spreading across Europe to justify its occupation in Gaza and in the West Bank.
I was suggesting to bring this interfaith dialogue to Europe because the anti-Islam sentiment that is spreading across Europe from the UK, Germany, Italy, France is dramatic, is of the extreme. And this also feeds the machinery that is helping apartheid Israel to survive and thrive.
Albanese says effective academic boycotts aimed at Israel will require a network of universities working together around the world. The academic boycotts are among other actions that pro-Palestinian supporters are calling for as punishment for Israel's ongoing attacks against Palestine.
I tend to amplify what human rights movement and people standing for human rights do, because this is my way of learning and this is my way of contributing from a human rights perspective and using my positionality. But it's very difficult to push universities to become fully apartheid free. But don't get discouraged. It's a work in progress.
Vice Chancellor of the University of the Western Cape, Professor Robert Balfour, says the knowledge generated at the institution during South Africa's struggle for freedom can also be used to liberate Palestine. He says the university will continue to stand in solidarity with the people of Palestine. Balfour was also speaking during the critical dialogue held at UWC.
It means standing as our founders did for the belief that knowledge must serve people and not privilege. When we speak about Palestine, we do so from an ethical tradition anchored in South Africa's own history of solidarity, solidarity among the oppressed, which is geared towards, at a university, the pedagogies of freedom.
Struggle cleric and anti-apartheid activist Dr. Alan Busak has called on universities across South Africa to cut ties with Israel. He says academic institutions nationwide should also adopt a decision to impose an academic boycott on Israeli universities, such as the one that was taken by the University of the Western Cape. During the gathering, Busak lit a candle in remembrance of all those who have died in Gaza during the conflict between Israel and Hamas.
Its flame bears witness to their courage and to the world's failure to protect the sanctity of their lives. This light is a summons to truth, to justice, to unwavering solidarity. It calls to the conscience of every university in this land to follow the example of this university and to break the bonds of collaboration with apartheid in any guise or geography.
Albanese was also bestowed the Anglican Archbishop's Award for Peace with Justice at the University of the Western Cape, awarded by the Anglican Church of Southern Africa. Previous recipients include former Public Protector Thuli Madonsela and Archbishop Desmond Tutu. I'm Corbin August in Cape Town.
Africa, meet Abedi.
Yeah, that's me.
Abedi is a music lover through and through.
I really love African music.
He's got a taste for all kinds of tunes and spends his days listening to Channel Africa. Guess what? He didn't know.
Okay.
Channel Africa wants to help Abedi and all music lovers everywhere to discover even more incredible music. That is why Channel Africa is calling on all African musicians to submit their music. Musicians, remember to give us all your relevant information. Make your submissions at music@channelafrica.co.za. Submissions are your chance to be heard on radio. But sadly, they do not guarantee that you'll be playlisted. All submissions will be carefully reviewed to see if they meet our station's requirement. Channel Africa, the African perspective. Let the good times roll. From the 10th of October, make a note. Channel Africa is stepping into a brand new era with the launch of our upgraded website and app. It's easy, fresh, and always on your fingertips. Wherever you are in the world, Africa's voice is just a click away. The future of Channel Africa goes live from the 10th of October. Don't miss the moments. Start your day right with Channel Africa Breakfast.
That smells delicious.
Live, 5 days a week.
So we are live on YouTube. That's where we live stream, as well as www.channelafrica.co.za. That YouTube handle at Channel Africa 1 is also the handle for our various social media platforms. We are on X, we are on Facebook, we are on TikTok, we are on LinkedIn as well. So do connect with us. We'd appreciate it. Let's come back to our continent now. The African continent lags behind in terms of infrastructure development. This came out of the Luanda Summit on Financing for Infrastructure Development in Africa in Angola. The summit aims to discuss and come up with innovative ways of mobilizing domestic resources to generate adequate capital for infrastructure development. Ditaba Tsotezi is in Angola.
The lack of energy infrastructure, road networks, railways, and digital and data infrastructure creates inequalities on the continent. This is according to the African leaders who have converged in Luanda to discuss how best to handle the matter. Addressing the summit, Angolan President and AU Chairperson João Lorenzo said young people must take the lead with new innovations to deal with the lack of adequate infrastructure in Africa.
We must identify the best and the most effective solution for financing rail, port and airport, energy and telecommunication infrastructure, not only to serve each country individually, but above all, so these infrastructure could be shared amongst countries in the context of regional and continental integration.
The AU Commission Chairperson, Mahmoud Ali Yusuf, has called on the private sector on the continent to come on board and invest in infrastructure development to address unequal access to basic needs.
A structured mobilization of the African private sector as a central actor of transformation, a coordinated and substantial access to climate financing, notably through the Alliance for Green Infrastructure Africa, which could mobilize more than $500 million in its first phase. Yes, indeed, what we are building here are not roads and bridges. We are building an Africa that is connected, confident, sovereign, capable of asserting itself as a pole of balance and creativity in the world to come.
The AU Development Agency Aude NEPAD CEO, Nados Bekele Thomas, says that the infrastructure crisis is an existential threat to the development of the continent.
The lesson from Dakar is clear. We can no longer treat financing as a fragmented marketplace of scattered deals. We must transform it into a unified strategy where member states strategically fund our development finance institutions, and our development finance institutions in turn channel that capital into priority bankable projects. We must commit to supporting our development finance institutions by giving them the necessary scale and by ensuring that our development finance institutions are granted preferred credit status.
The three-day summit will wrap up on Thursday, with the outcomes expected to be implemented in line with the AU's vision of 2063, where no one will be left behind. Ditaba Tsotezi, SABC News in Luanda, Angola.
So I don't know if you knew, but Ditaba in Setswana and Sepedi means news. And there we go. I have to just mention and throw it there that our news reporter there, his name definitely manifested for him in life and in reality. We enter the second hour now of Africa Rise and Shine. It's 7 o'clock Central African time, and this is Channel Africa. Broadcasting live from our Johannesburg studios in South Africa. My name is Asanda Beda. I'm riding solo today. My co-pilot, Peter Ndoro, will be back with us on Monday. But some few things to cover in this hour. Of course, we have to check in with Tanzania, having gone to the polls and what's happening in the country there, getting updates on what's happening on the ground. And then we also go to Sudan, where the International Federation of the Red Cross and Red Crescent Societies has confirmed the killing of 5 Sudanese Red Crescent volunteers. This in the city of Bara. We'll find out about those stories and more. Let's start with our news update. Here's Matapelo Mahape with that, and then Fikile Lingwati will follow with the news headlines.
SABC News. The African Perspective.
Thank you, Asanda, and good morning. The authorities in Tanzania have declared a curfew in the commercial capital Dar es Salaam after a tense election day. Several people were injured in clashes between demonstrators and police. The police curfew started at 6 p.m. local time, and the U.S. Embassy has advised American government personnel to take shelter at their residences. President Samia Suluhu Hassan is widely expected to win a second term after two top opposition candidates were disqualified from running, raising the ire of protesters. Internet services have been disrupted across the country. And the head of the World Health Organization, WHO, says that the agency has received reports that more than 460 civilians have been killed at a hospital in the Sudanese city of Al-Shafir. Tedros Ghebreyesus says that the organization is appalled and deeply shocked by the reports. It follows accusations by Sudanese Doctors Network that the paramilitary rapid support forces killed patients and abducted health workers at Al-Shafir yesterday. The head of the Norwegian Refugee Council, Jan Egeland, called Sudan the world's largest emergency.
It's become such a bitter conflict, and it's defenseless people that are slaughtered. It is absolutely horrific because it's hundreds of thousands of people's lives at stake. It's the largest displacement crisis, the largest humanitarian crisis, the largest emergency on earth today.
An Ethiopian migrant sex offender mistakenly released from prison was given a $161 payment after threatening to disrupt his deportation from the UK to Ethiopia. Hedush Kebatu was jailed after sexually assaulting a 14-year-old girl and a woman while living in an asylum hotel in Epping, Essex, but was mistakenly freed by prison staff on Friday. He was rearrested after 2 days. The Ethiopian was put on a flight on Tuesday night and landed the following morning, the Home Office said. The payment was made by the removal team as an alternative to a slower and more extensive process, the Prime Minister Keir Starmer's spokesperson said. Paid removals are normal under the Facilitated Returns scheme, with foreign nationals who agreed to leave the UK being given close to $2,000. Onto this now, the U.S. Embassy in Mali has urged all American citizens to leave the country immediately, warning of rising terror threats and a worsening fuel crisis caused by a jihadi blockade. Mali has been experiencing a fuel crisis for weeks, caused by armed groups blocking routes used by fuel tankers, particularly affecting Bamako. The country suspended schools and universities nationwide last week due to severe fuel scarcity, Tudongobeni reports.
The embassy announced last Friday that non-essential diplomatic staff and their families would leave Mali amid the worsening fuel shortage and growing security concerns. It said it could not provide routine or emergency consular services outside Bamako and noted a travel advisory for Mali remains in effect. The warning also urged travelers to Mali to contact the embassy in case of an emergency. The embassy urged Americans to avoid demonstrations and roadblocks, remain vigilant, keep a low profile, stay aware of the surroundings, maintain communication and accessible travel documents.
And on to this now, the daughter of a woman who was left behind by a luxury cruise ship on a remote island and later died has accused the operator of a failure of care and common sense. The body of Suzanne Reese, of 80 years old, was found by rescue workers on Lizard Island on the Great Barrier Reef on Sunday, the day before she had been hiking on the island with her fellow passengers, but was not on the ship when it left hours later. Catherine Reese said she was shocked and saddened by the choral adventure left without her mother, whom she described as healthy, active, a keen gardener and bushwalker. Catherine said she hoped a corneal inquiry would find out what the company should have done that might have saved her mother's life. The Australian Maritime Safety Authority said it was investigating the death and would meet the ship's crew when it is due to dock in Darwin later this week. For any news stories you'd like to share with us, please send an email to newsroom@channelafrica.co.za or call us on +2711 714 4459. For Channel Africa News, I am Matapela Mahape.
SABC News. The African Perspective.
In our sports headline, Amajimbo's head coach has finally announced his World Cup squad. And Laura Volvat in Marizan Cup guide the Proteas women into the World Cup final. I'll be back with these and other stories at the bottom of the hour.
Bringing you the energy, news, and good vibes to kickstart your day. This is Rise and Shine on Channel Africa.
The U.S. Embassy in Mali is urging all American citizens to leave the country immediately, warning of rising terror threats and a worsening fuel crisis caused by a jihadi blockade. Mali has been experiencing a fuel crisis for weeks, caused by armed groups blocking routes used by fuel tankers, particularly affecting Bamako. Tutongo Beni has this report.
The embassy announced last Friday that non-essential diplomatic staff and their families would leave Mali amid the worsening fuel shortage and growing security concerns. It said it could not provide routine or emergency consular services outside Bamako and noted a travel advisory for Mali remains in effect. The warning also urged travelers to Mali to contact the embassy in case of an emergency. The embassy urged Americans to avoid demonstrations and roadblocks, remain vigilant, keep a low profile, stay aware of the surroundings, maintain communication and accessible travel documents. Mali has faced a fuel crisis for weeks caused by armed groups blocking routes used by fuel tankers, particularly affecting Bamako. Long queues have formed at gas stations, while public transport and motorcycle taxis have been severely disrupted, leaving Bamako's usually crowded streets unusually quiet. Mali suspended education nationwide for 2 weeks on Sunday. Higher education institutions in the capital also said they were forced to suspend classes, citing the inability of students and teachers to reach campuses due to the fuel shortage. For Channel Africa News, I am Tutongo Beni in Johannesburg.
Download the SABC app and take Channel Africa with you everywhere you go.
As Johannesburg strives to cement its status as a world-class African city, delegates at the 2025 City Power Energy Indaba say innovation in energy technologies and climate adaptation are key to driving a just and inclusive energy transition for all residents. Held under the theme Powering Johannesburg's Sustainable Future, our economics reporter Innocent Simosa has more from the Indaba. It's underway in Johannesburg.
As Johannesburg works to secure a stable and reliable power supply, City Power contributes nearly $440 million to the city's economy each year. Energy expert Professor Vali Padiachi shares some concrete steps that City Power should take to modernize Johannesburg's electricity grid and ensure energy security amid growing demand and frequent power disruptions.
Well, there are various steps that can be taken, but I think the core step is obviously to get new generation, so new electrons. I think we're getting there, albeit it's a bit slow, because that value chain of getting big projects to close takes a lot of time. Okay, but we're getting there. Then, of course, on the other side, if you can't get lots of electrons on the grid, then you need to save. So energy efficiency would be also significant. But then you can get all the generation of electrons, but if you can't transport it from the generator to the customer, then you're wasting your time.
It is believed that almost half of the $440 million stems directly from projects that strengthen energy security and grid resilience. But how can City Power ensure that local communities are fully included in the just energy transition? Professor Padiachi explains.
I'm glad you asked that question, because all of these initiatives I'm talking about would involve collaboration with the community. And from my experience, if you do not bring the community into the project value chain, then those projects don't succeed.
Meanwhile, Betha Dlamini, founding president of African Women in Energy and Power, emphasizes that the continent has the duty to educate communities on the just energy transition.
The whole continent has a responsibility to educate communities on the meaning of a just energy transition. not only the just element, which talks about inclusion and equity, but the transition into clean, accessible, and affordable energy, the construct of the value chain so that communities, number one, are able to advocate for the projects that are beneficial for their environment. Now, that's number one. Number two, communities are able to identify opportunities for citizens within their jurisdictions.
Beta added that communities play a crucial role in shaping how just energy policies are developed.
In addition, as countries design just energy transition policies, communities play a pivotal role in directing how those policies are designed so that as communities, they are not left behind the economic opportunities that are brought about.
For Channel Africa News, I'm Innocent Samos in Johannesburg.
All right, we need to give you an update in terms of what's happening in Tanzania, and we'll try and connect with SABC reporter there to give us the latest. We spoke to him yesterday as we were looking at what's happening in the polls, security personnel and electoral officials that were deployed at the time, and things seeming to be calm. We also heard from some Tanzanians who had already cast their ballots. I think it was an hour into the voting when we spoke to get those updates, and they seemed hopeful, and they seemed to be grateful to be able to cast their ballots. However, though, there is some reports of crackdown in terms of journalists and reporters and even international observers not being able to move freely in the country or report on what's been happening on those elections, and of course concerns raised around that, and that remains to be seen in terms of whether we can get a clear update on that front of things and whether freedom of speech was allowed throughout these elections. And even now, as we try and get analysis, and one can't help but get the sense that you need to tread lightly even when you ask questions around media freedom and how these elections were held, whether they were free and fair or not. Fearing for the safety, of course, of those reporters and news analysts. Amnesty International had also raised the alarm, saying that they had observed, and this is before the elections took place, that they had observed ramped up crackdowns on opposition figures, on journalists as civil society, and that even assembly and political participation were being negatively impacted. Of course, we already spoke about key opposition figures in Tanzania who have been barred. Some have been arrested, and they've also been enforced disappearances that have been documented. It would be also interesting to find out what Amnesty International is saying now after the voting has taken place. Lots of commentary on social media platforms. Of course, the public has a say on that one, but we'll see if we can get a hold of somebody to give us the latest and what's happening on the ground there in Tanzania. So stay tuned to Channel Africa, and of course our programming will continue throughout the day, not just on Rise and Shine, to give you an update on those elections. Let's go to Sudan now, and we turn there where the International Federation of the Red Cross and Red Crescent Societies has confirmed the killing of 5 Sudanese Red Crescent volunteers in the city of Bara in North Kordofan. The incident has shocked the humanitarian community and highlighted the growing dangers faced by aid workers on the front lines of the conflict. Joining us now at 7:15 Central African Time is Pierre Kremer, Deputy Regional Director for Africa at the IFRC. Pierre, thank you for joining us. How are you this morning?
Morning. Thank you for the invitation.
It's our pleasure. What more can you tell us about what happened in Bara and the circumstances surrounding the deaths of these 5 volunteers?
The circumstances are still a little bit unclear, even if some videos have been circulated, but what is clear is that we have 5 volunteers who have been killed. Some of them has been mistreated, humiliated. That's the facts we are quite clear about, and we call upon all parties to have an absolute respect for our emblems, because these volunteers were showing their vest, they were showing their ID, and they were claiming their belonging to the Sudanese Red Crescent, and we are totally shocked and horrified by what has happened there.
How has the Sudanese Red Crescent and IFRC family been coping with this tragedy? What's been the reaction on the ground and within your teams?
Well, the Sudanese Red Crescent itself is, of course, extremely horrified by what has happened, because all these volunteers are families. They have been on the grounds for 2.5 years now, since the crisis and the conflict started. In addition to that, most of the population in Sudan has been affected in a way or another by the conflict. And despite being affected in their families, they have been on the ground supporting or delivering services to the communities in extreme conditions most of the time, and walking across the line of conflict. So for us, that's the worst thing that can happen, having volunteers being killed, not only because the emblem is not respected, which is a condition for operating, but also because without these volunteers all across the 18 provinces of Sudan, no international organization can operate. Without this, the Sudanese Red Crescent and maybe other local actors as well, of course, nobody can work, or no humanitarian organization can work in Sudan today.
Sudan has been one of the most dangerous places for humanitarian work in recent months, and you cite some of those challenges when it comes to aid workers and volunteers. So how can those staff and volunteers who are facing these challenges better be equipped to deliver aid, because it is much needed there?
Absolutely. Well, we have lost 21 volunteers or staff of Sudanese Red Crescent since the beginning of the conflict. And again, the only way to work is precisely to have a very localized presence, which is the case of Sudanese Red Crescents. They have local branches in all the 8, as I mentioned. So they are living within the communities, and that's the condition for them basically to deliver services, because they know the population, they know the community, they know the context, and they are in capacity to negotiate and to access the people in needs. And that's how we maintain this lifeline, somehow, humanitarian lifeline, over the past 2.5 years.
So what does this all mean then for volunteering work in the Sudan? The uptake of volunteers, has it declined, as we've seen in recent times because of these incidents? And if it has declined, how do you motivate for more volunteers to come forward?
I would say they are self-motivated because they are living within the communities. What they need is, of course, resources, support, especially from the international partners. That's the case for the Sudanese Red Crescent, supported by the IFRC or the Red Cross Red Crescent movement partners. And that's, in addition to that, they have been trying, of course, to a series of humanitarian services. So it's not only for distributing food or health services, it's also to enable people to bounce back somehow from the situation. And today, our challenge is not only to maintain people and the affected communities afloat, but also to being able at some point to engage on a resilience process, on reconstructing their life. There we have a population, again, that is one of the worst humanitarian, facing one of the worst humanitarian crises. And they are the one as well who have faced a huge trauma after 2.5 years.
What message would you give to the warring parties in Sudan, as well as the international community at this moment?
Absolute respect of our emblem, the Red Cross Red Crescent, the respect of our fundamental principles, which includes, of course, humanity, but also neutrality and impartiality. And we ask for these humanitarian actors, which are sometimes the only contact with the outside world, to be supported, resourced, and again, to put Sudan on the top of the map, because it has been one of the most neglected and one of the worst humanitarian crises, again, for more than 2 years now.
Yeah. Pierre, we're going to leave it there for now. Thank you so much for updating us on this very dire situation.
Thank you very much.
Pierre Kremer is the Deputy Regional Director for Africa at the IFRC, speaking to us about the killing of 5 Sudanese Red Crescent volunteers in North Kordofan State.
Download the SABC app and take Channel Africa with you everywhere you go.
Let's go to Tanzania now, where authorities have declared a curfew in the commercial capital, Dar es Salaam, after a tense election day. Several people were injured in clashes between demonstrators and police. The police curfew started at 6 p.m. local time. President Samia Suluhu Hassan is widely expected to win a second term after the leading opposition candidates were disqualified from running against her. Protesters are angry about the banning of the 2 candidates. Internet service has been disrupted across the country. For the latest, we're now joined by Roland Ibole from Amnesty International Tanzania. We're going to try and get a hold of Roland. I'm hearing he's not yet there. Let's take a short break as we make our way to this chat.
The Midnight Snack, 12 to 3 a.m.
Our fitness coach, her name is Yvonne Dimagazo Pasha. How to remain consistent with gyms, Dima, and I'm going to put you on the spot right now. As we are talking, I will send you my picture and I want you to tell me what you think I should work on. Because, you know, when I look at myself, Dima, I think I'm very handsome. I'm so good looking, oh my goodness. Like here at Channel Africa where I work, I think I'm one of the most good looking people ever. Like sometimes when I look at myself in the mirror, I never get used to how good I look. I'm just amazing.
You're okay with the way you're looking. You wish people could and now you want to put me on the spot.
Do I need gym?
Yeah. I mean, if you can just consider eating healthy, cutting down a few foodstuffs such as junk.
The Midnight Snack, every Monday, 12 to 3 a.m. with Chanduko Ligege. Get Channel Africa on DSTV Audio Bouquet. Channel 802. Got something to say? Are you passionate about issues that matter? Do you have a voice that deserves to be heard? Well, we've got the perfect platform for you. Call in or drop us a WhatsApp on +27 63 406 9126. And we will call you back so you could have your say and be part of the conversation.
30 years of age. I just turned 30 on the 15th of November. So yeah, that's who I am, you know.
It's not just talk. It's your chance to air your views. Share your opinion. Engage with a community that values your perspective. Follow us on our social media. Visit our website at www.channelafrica.co.za and get ready to share your views on Channel Africa, the African perspective. Start your day informed, inspired, and entertained. Asanda and Peter bring you Rise and Shine. Weekdays, 6 till 9 a.m. Central African Time.
Let's get the latest now from Tanzania post-elections. And their president, the current one, Samia Suluhu Hassan, being expected widely to win a second term after the leading opposition candidates were disqualified from running. We get joined by now Roland Ibole from Amnesty International Tanzania. Roland, good morning. Always great having catch-up sessions with you. We're talking post-elections in Tanzania today. How are you feeling?
Good morning and thank you for having me. Of course, we are waiting for a declaration because this is one election that we saw President Samia Suluhu Hassan, of course, a fast re-election go unchallenged. And in our report, the Amnesty International document, a lot of violations that have led to a wave of terror ahead of the elections. In fact, we're calling our report unopposed, unchecked, unopposed, and just wave of terror against Tanzania ahead of 2025 votes. So there was a lot of protest yesterday, and we fear that today we may learn or get to record number of people that were actually killed in the protest, but also see a lot of arraignment in courts. So the protest.
In terms of your observations, would you say things have gotten worse or they've stayed relatively the same? As Amnesty International, you observed before elections started that Tanzanian authorities had ramped up crackdowns on opposition figures, journalists and civil society, that in terms of free speech and free assembly choice and political participation, there were restrictions.
There were various restrictions. There were restrictions even with, freedom of assembly. Restrictions went ahead into, even looking at different talkers have been arrested, jailed, and some of them are acted. CCM members themselves, like Humphrey Polepole, an ambassador of Tanzania to Cuba, arbitrarily, abducted and we don't know his whereabouts right now. So there has been a lot of fear. The situation of Luhaga Mpina, a presidential candidate of Wazalendo, who had just resigned from CPM to join opposition to run for presidency. And you all know what's happening to Tundulisu, whereby he is in prison, but also every aspect of the election will not include the main opposition party, Chadema, because it was disqualified from running for election. And of course, the media blackout that we see, including online media, Jamii Forum. So the environment has been such that, no one can speak, no one can really challenge anything that is happening. But yesterday was an awakening, because then we saw Tanzanians themselves coming to the streets and wanting to protest what they see as unfair elections. One thing that I must mention, even as we talked about it, is that the aspect of Tanzanians coming to the streets with a no reforms, no elections tag to their protest. We would also necessarily brought in by government promises themselves, and Samia can put power, saying that they really reform the electoral process under the government, and was ready to see that there were constitutional and electoral reforms in the country.
And those Tanzanians who've taken to the streets to protest and using that avenue, what's the current situation with the avenue of social media? Are they able to express themselves freely on that? Is that even available in the country, as we understand that the internet service has been disrupted?
No, there is no access to internet in the country. In fact, unless you have other means, alternative means of communicating, then you are shut down. So that means also social media is actually, shut down in the country. And I think this has been the norm, and one of the very authoritarian practices that we've seen, especially in countries in the region, where during elections or key moments, key political moments, internet is shut down. But also in Tanzania, a few months ago, when Boniface Mwangi and Dr. Sakwiri from Uganda and Kenya were abducted in the country, and Kenyans went to the social media trying to protest us. Tanzania actually shut down X. A few weeks later, 80,000 accounts, social media accounts were actually shut. And this is the norm in the country, whereby whenever it is that decent will go from online to offline and back, and we shut down that avenue of communication with internet. And in fact, this is where it cannot shut down internet, they shut down social media after.
Is there a sense from Tanzanians who are in protest of what's happening in their country, who have not been able to use the platforms of social media, that they are getting support from others who are commenting on social media about what's going on in Tanzania from outside the country?
Yes. There's so many Tanzanians outside the countries who are, they are getting information directly from, their countrymen and women and really sharing this information outside. But also to let you know that there has been tremendous, solidarity from Kenyans. Kenyan both media, particularly mainstream media, have been really reporting on, what's been happening in Tanzania, and reporting in a forthright and very, 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 bold way. But also Kenyans on social media have also gone out in terms of are trying to report on what's going on in Tanzania, but also condemning the kind of, rule by fist and the kind of violations that we are seeing in the context of this election, especially right now that the results are about to be announced.
I'll leave it there, Roland. Thank you so much for your updates, and thanks. Be safe.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Great. And that's Roland Ibole from Amnesty International Tanzania giving us the latest in terms of post-election observations and updates from the country Tanzania. 7:31 Central African Time. Let's get our news headlines now. Here is Matapelo Mohape.
SABC News. Headlines. The African Perspective.
Thank you, Asanda. Headlines this hour. Cameroon's opposition leader, Issa Titroma Bakri, has pledged to resist President Paul Biya until the final victory, citing deepened tensions and security crackdowns. Bakri supporters have taken to the streets with 23 deaths reported by Stand Up for Cameroon. And the South African Human Rights Commission, SAHRC, is addressing public trust concerns over inadequate implementation of recommendations during its 30th anniversary celebration, urging for proper follow-up and improvement in areas of improvement. And Category 5 storm Hurricane Melissa continues to wreak havoc across the Caribbean, causing widespread destruction and death, leaving at least 5 dead and 20 others injured. More details on these and other stories at top of the hour.
SABC News. Headlines. The African Perspective.
And now we check in with the world of sports. Here is Fikile Lingwati with our latest.
Sports on Channel Africa. The African Perspective.
We kick off with football news. South Africa's under-17 men's national football team, Amajimbo's coach, Vela Khumalo, has confirmed his final squad for the upcoming FIFA Under-17 World Cup in Qatar, amid the reports of turbulent preparations. The Under-17 World Cup will be held in Qatar from the 3rd to the 27th of November. The late squad announcement has been viewed as a reflection of off-field challenges during the build-up to the tournament. Head coach Khumalo's side has been placed in Group A, where they will come up against the host Qatar, Italy and Bolivia. Notably, none of these teams featured in the previous edition in 2023 and will now hope to make an impact. This marks South Africa's first appearance at the Under-17 World Cup since 2015 and their fourth qualification through the AFCON knockout stages. South Africa will open the campaign at the tournament on the 3rd of November before taking on Qatar on the 6th of November. Amajimbos will then wrap up their group stage campaign with a final match against Italy on the 9th of November. Now, cricket news. Proteas right arm medium bowler Marizanne Kapp etched a name into cricket history, becoming the ICC Women's World Cup's all-time leading wicket taker with her 44th scalp, surpassing the legendary Julian Goswami. Her fiery spell of 5 for 20 dismantled England's top order, including clean bowling both Amy Jones and Heather Knight for Dogs. At the other end, Captain Laura Volva delivered one of the greatest innings ever seen on the stage, anchoring South Africa's charge with a masterful knock that powered the Proteas women to the commanding 125-run victory in yesterday's semi-final. Kapp credits the team's composure for their victory.
There was a calmness in the group this morning for some reason. We just felt like what will happen will happen. And yeah, I think once we lost the toss, I was actually happy that we batted first. Just looking at the stats of this ground and how it's been going this World Cup, I feel like they probably felt like they were going to roll us over, like we did in the first game against them. But I feel like our two openers set it up beautifully for us to come in and just play our natural game.
And with golf, Jordan Spieth, Ashkay Bashia and Billy Horschel have been announced as the 3 players who will fill out the 20-player field at this year's Hero World Challenge in the Bahamas. For any sports stories you'd like to share with us, please send an email to newsroom@channelafrica.co.za or call us on +2711 714 4459. This is Channel Africa Sport with me, Fikile Lingwati.
Sports on Channel Africa. The African Perspective. Africa in Business on Channel Africa.
The United States was very vocal at the beginning of South Africa's G20 presidency, and this is largely due to strained relations with South Africa at the time, that they were not really keen on participating. Where do they stand right now?
The US is planning to take over the presidency of the G20 next year, and our understanding from them is that they intend to continue to do so, and therefore it is quite difficult then to be in a situation where you are not attending deputies' meetings or discussions during our presidency and then to take over the presidency next year. From a finance track perspective, there has been engagement. We've been working on a communique last week and this week here in Zimbabwe. What's important about that is that it's a consensus document. And so all the members in the room have to agree to the language that is used there. And our US colleagues have been part of those discussions and negotiations.
Bringing the African markets into your home. Channel Africa, the African Perspective. Hi there. Do you want to elevate your business and give it a voice in South Africa and Africa as a whole? Well, in that case, let Channel Africa make this a possibility. Channel Africa is willing to advertise your business for as little as 30,000 rands or $1,719.18. To get access to these great rates, send all requests to mokoenata@SABC. That's MOKOENATA@SABC. Channel Africa, the African Perspective.
And now let's find out what's happening in the world of business. Here's Tabiso Lehuku to let us know.
Business news on Channel Africa, the African Perspective.
Thanks, Asanda, and good morning. BMW South Africa and Opel Astra SA are recalling some of its vehicles due to seat belts and the driver airbag inflator not manufactured correctly. The National Consumer Commission says it has received recall notifications from both motor vehicle companies. The Commission's Petron Daba says BMW is recalling just over 70 vehicles, while Stellantis are recalling Opel Astra H models manufactured between 2004 and 2006, as well as the J models manufactured from 2009 to 2015.
BMW South Africa is recalling a total of 75 vehicles, 1 Series, 2 Series, X1 as well as X2. According to the manufacturer, one of the seat belts in the affected vehicles may not have been manufactured correctly. On the other hand, Stellantis South Africa, they are recalling Opel Astra J and Opel Astra H, which were made available from 2004 to 2015.
The South African Social Security Agency, SASSA, has refuted claims that beneficiaries will be receiving double payment for their social grants. The agency's spokesperson, Andile Chona, has urged beneficiaries not to entertain information that doesn't come from credible sources.
SASSA would like to state that this is not true, and that as SASSA we urge all our beneficiaries and the public at large not to entertain this misinformation, as there has been no announcement of social grants double payment by SASSA or government.
Egypt's Kamet Industries Group has signed a memorandum of understanding with the Emirati Chinese Al-Khala Red Flag Group to build 3 industrial projects in the Suez Canal Economic Zone's Ain Sogna Industrial Zone. The total expected investment cost for the 3 planned projects under this cooperation is estimated at around $3.5 billion. The SC Zone's aggressive modernization and investment drive signal Egypt's emergence as a serious contender in the logistics and manufacturing sectors. Liberia has replaced its mining minister and top mining regulator, the office of President Joseph Boakai announced. This as the West African nation and iron ore producer pursues talks with Washington on investments in its critical minerals sector. The new minister, Matenoke Tingban, served as deputy mining minister under former President Ellen Johnson Sirleaf. The presidency says that the decision to appoint him in place of the previous minister, Wilmot J. Empire, as part of moves to improve governance and efficiencies. The changes come as Liberia seeks to attract foreign investment into mining industry, which recently identified deposits of lithium, cobalt, manganese, and rare earths, minerals vital for electric vehicle and renewable energy technologies. The yen fell in the wake of the Bank of Japan's decision to stand pat on rates, while the dollar held gains as traders trimmed bets on another U.S. rate cut this year and awaited more details on a potential U.S.-China trade deal. The Japanese currency was 0.1% weaker at 152.90 per dollar, reversing gains from earlier in the session. The euro similarly rose 0.2% to 177.50 yen, while sterling was up 0.15% to 201.70 yen. $1 in Nigeria is trading at 1,452 naira. Botswana 13 pula 87, Kenya 128 shilling 372, and Zambia 21 kwacha 94. The BRICS countries in Brazil, the dollar there will cost you 5 real 35. Russia 79 rubles 55. India 88 rupees 22. China 7 yuan 9. And in South Africa, the dollar will cost you 17 rand 13 cents. $1 is trading at 75 pence to the British pound and 85 to the euro. Gold is trading at $3,938 and platinum $1,586 per ounce. Brent crude oil is at $64.55 a barrel. For any business stories you would like to share with us, please send us an email to newsroom@channelafrica.co.za or call us on +2711 714 4459. For Channel Africa Business in Johannesburg, I'm Thabiso Lohoko.
Business news on Channel Africa. The African perspective. Get Channel Africa on DSTV Audio Bouquet. Channel 802.
10 years after the landmark Paris Agreement, a new UN report shows that countries' climate pledges fall far short of what's needed to avoid catastrophic warming. Oxfam says the richest and most polluting nations have betrayed those suffering most from climate impacts, including people in Africa who are already living with droughts, floods, and food insecurity. Joining us now from Kampala is Jackson Rukara, Oxfam's Climate Justice Coordinator in Uganda. Jackson, good morning to you and thank you for making time.
Good morning.
Let's start with this new UN report in terms of what your immediate reaction is to the findings, especially as someone working on climate justice in Africa.
What we have committed to say is that the commitments that have been submitted by the different parties to the UNFCCC still fall short of what was agreed in the previous Paris Agreement, that would reduce by 2030 emissions by 0.5. But when you look at what is being submitted at the UNFCCC and the report, the synthesis report talking about emission reduction, we are still very far away below the targets that we want to achieve. And that's why Oxfam is calling on the UNFCCC and its leadership to ensure that there are robust agreements at the COP30 to tax the polluters. The developing countries that have polluted the world must be taxed. And they must be taxed in a way that is appropriate to support countries that are feeling the pinch of the climate crisis. So money generated from the taxes would do a lot to support adaptation in the countries that are vulnerable to the climate crisis, but also support mitigation measures world over. And so we are calling for strong actions, for strong deliberations, and for ambitious pledges from the developed countries to support emission reduction and meet the commitment of the Paris Agreement.
Who are some of the culprits? Oxfam says the richest and most polluting countries have betrayed those that are hardest hit by climate disasters. And what are you seeing in Uganda and the wider region that illustrates this inequality?
For example, in our country, implementation of adaptation and mitigation measures have become a challenge. Even addressing climate-induced losses and damage is still challenging to us as a country because there are no finances that can support these challenges, implementation of action that address the challenges. So we think that there is need for more robust funding that should be generated from the international community because Africa is not responsible. For example, Uganda is not responsible. We have tried to conserve our natural resources. And we want to think that we are not responsible for the challenge that we are facing today. It was caused somewhere, and those that caused this challenge must be responsible to finance loss and damage in our countries, to finance adaptation in agriculture, for example, in our countries, to finance other mitigation measures. Because Uganda as a country, for example, has committed to also contribute to emission reduction through measures that support forestation, for example, preservation of the existing forests, preservation of the existing wetlands. But we need resources to support the farmers to be able to do that. And these resources should be generated from those companies that actually participated in the pollution, from the countries that polluted the world, and therefore they should be able to pay.
The report shows that current national climate plans would only cut emissions by 10% by the year 2035, when science says that we need at least 60% and not this 10%. Why is global action still moving so slowly?
I think it's because of the denials that we see. Every time we go for the conference of parties, we are in the denials. For example, the recent pronouncements by Trump, that shows that we are still living in denial. Polluting countries are still living in denial. They don't still believe that climate change is real. And for me, I think that they are living in denial. So it's high time they accepted that the climate challenge is real and that it will impact on them as well. Because we see hurricanes are affecting the people in America, for example. We've seen serious disasters in China. And so countries like China, countries like America should be able to take responsibility and put in finances that can be able to support emission reduction. But also being intentional to make sure that they have measures that are robust and that there are pledges that come from them that will support emission reduction as we pledged at the Paris conference.
So how do we ensure that the financing gathered, albeit not enough at this stage, through the taxation of the biggest contributing countries to pollution, lands where it needs to create impactful and sustainable transitions?
We need to ensure effective accountability mechanisms. For example, we are going for COP30. We must hold countries accountable. We must hold the parties accountable. Everybody should be accountable. How much have you pledged? How much have you been able to put in? And how much of that money has been able to go to the countries that are most affected? At country level, we are also putting up measures of monitoring what comes in our countries in terms of climate adaptation and mitigation funds, and want to see how much of these funds are reaching the communities. We are also holding ourselves accountable as countries that are affected by climate challenges. So accountability will be key, transparency will be key, that we pledge and meet our pledges, and that money that is pledged is able to reach the countries that are most affected. But even within the countries that are most affected, there are existing accounting mechanisms that are participatory, where people monitor what has come in and see that the money is reaching the most affected grassroots people.
For the poorer countries who hold little or no responsibility in cutting emissions as much as the richest countries, is there a sense that they can get away with a slower pace in implementing emission-cutting efforts since they only contribute a small percentage to global gas emissions? Africa contributes only about 3%, majority of that even 3%. I think it's 1% accounting for Southern Africa because of Eskom. Or is it stressed enough that even amongst these countries, especially in Africa, accelerating climate pledges is a problem for us all and it needs equal effort?
I think it's not a huge problem as per se, because we must know that the polluting countries made a mistake, and so Africa should not follow suit. We must be responsible in terms of countries in Africa that look to be most vulnerable to the impacts of climate change. We must preserve what we still have, but also in terms of our interventions, we're talking about just energy transition. I know that many countries in Africa are going into oil exploration, or they're already into oil exploration. But how do we become intentional and conscious that our exploration also provides opportunities for responsible buffer opportunities that will support our emission consumption? So we must be able to do that. We must be responsible as countries in Africa to make sure that we preserve, we conserve what we have. We shouldn't go in the wagon of the polluters because we don't want to reach there. But we must present ambitious asks to the polluting countries, especially as an African negotiating group. We need a common voice to speak to the challenges of our time. And that common position should be presented at the global space, especially at COP30, to say we demand for robust financing agreements, for robust grants and not debts, because we don't want again to increase the debt burden of the African countries that are already burdened. And so money should be released in terms of grants to support adaptation, to support mitigation, to support the protection of the already existing natural vegetation that we have in Africa. We must be proud that for us, we are still having these vegetations, and we must preserve them. We are talking about carbon markets. The carbon markets should actually not be deals that, again, are going to put African countries and global South countries in a problem. We are saying that carbon market mechanisms should be consultative with the countries that are most affected. In countries where we're working with smallholder farmers, we want to see carbon markets that are benefiting the farmers. Because my farmers in Uganda are, for example, integrating agroecology in their farming systems. So what are the benefits that they can get from this intervention that they're doing?
And you laid out
locally?
in terms of your expectations as Oxfam from the leaders, the world leaders at COP30 that's coming up in Brazil. And thanks again for your time, Jackson. We appreciate it.
Thank you so much.
Jackson Rukara is Oxfam's Climate Justice Coordinator in Uganda. Republic Bus and Truck RBT company in South Africa manager Reg Bennett says Auto Mechanica plays a vital role in supporting South Africa's automotive industry. Speaking to Channel Africa at the 10th Auto Mechanica Trade Fair 2025 underway in Midrand, Bennett said the event offers valuable brand exposure for RBT across Southern Africa, the SADC and Sub-Saharan Africa. He added that as trade relations strengthen within the region, efficient road transport remains critical to moving goods, minerals and fuel, especially amid ongoing challenges in rail infrastructure. Channel Africa's reporter Michael Mbewe filed this report.
The Automechanica International Trade Fair provides a comprehensive platform for industry professionals to explore a wide range of products and services across key categories, including parts and components, accessories, workshop equipment, tires and batteries, and fleet management. With a focus on innovation, sustainability, and the latest industry trends, Automechanica is an ideal event for networking, discovering new business opportunities, and gaining valuable insights into the future of the automotive sector. In an interview with Channel Africa, Republic Bus and Truck Company South Africa manager Reg Bennett appreciated the role Automechanica plays.
Automechanic as a platform in the general motor industry and new vehicle sales, used vehicle sales, and more specifically in parts and accessories is very important from a South African consumer perspective, because the more we have people that specialize in specific areas, the easier it becomes to service and maintain vehicles, which also in general has a price benefit to the end user. So for us as a company that sells trucks, we'd like to support events like this purely because it's a great brand awareness opportunity for us to make sure that the brand gets out to the RBT brand, gets out to the general community, not only in Southern Africa, but in SADC and also as far as Sub-Saharan Africa. So bringing our brands to a platform like this makes a lot of sense for us.
Bennett adds that strong trade ties within the SADC region, led by South Africa, present major growth opportunities for the commercial transport sector, with road transport now essential to regional trade amid ongoing rail inefficiencies.
Sub-Saharan Africa, or the SADC region in general, is with the trade relations that South Africa has with the other countries in the SADC alliance, gives us an opportunity to travel, to expand our business, more specifically in the commercial environment, because infrastructure in the SADC region, Sub-Saharan African region, is not what it should be. It can be leveled up quite a bit. If you talk about rail and the inefficiencies of rail at this point in time, the commercial environment, especially road transport, has become a vital part of how Sub-Saharan Africa and the SADC region survives, from moving minerals from the DRC to South Africa, moving minerals from Zambia, moving of fuel from Beira into the rest of Africa, moving of goods into the SADC region from South Africa, the flow of it.
Bennett warned that if South African businesses don't take the lead in regional trade, competitors from neighboring SADC countries will seize those opportunities.
And as I said to you off air, if the South African community does not take control of the flow of goods from South Africa into the SADC region and Sub-Saharan region, somebody else will. It is imminent. We have a lot of transporters from Zambia, Tanzania, the DRC, Zimbabwe, Botswana, Namibia, where they have the hunger, the urge, and the need to support themselves, and in doing so, taking vital business away from South Africans, where we are not willing or don't have the appetite for risk to move into Sub-Saharan Africa or into the SADC region.
The director of SA Tankers and Trailers, Craig Jordan, said Africa offers vast opportunities, but poor rail infrastructure hampers competitiveness, leaving the continent reliant on road transport, a boost for tanker sales, yet a challenge for the wider economy.
Africa is a continent that holds many, many opportunities. I think there's one disappointing feature is that our rail does not seem to feature, which makes us not only as a country but as a continent less competitive to the rest of the world. Most of the world are moving a lot of their commodities obviously by rail, where we're moving a lot of our commodities by road. For me, it's not a bad option because we have the opportunity to sell more road-using tankers and road-using moving equipment. But as a country and as an economy, we tend to suffer a little bit on a global spectre.
Jordan further cautioned about the growing dominance of Chinese manufacturers in Africa, noting that the extensive product range and attractive finance packages pose a serious challenge to European and local competitors in sectors like transport, mining, and industry.
The one concern I think I do have in the region is the dominance of the Chinese. I think you cannot ignore how powerful they've become, and you cannot ignore the amounts of product lines that they actually feature in. Not just commercial, but being at Automechanica, you see how robust their economy is and where they feature. I think we've been in the Tanzanian market for 10 or 15 years as a brand. We've been pretty dominant in East Africa, but visiting Tanzania last month really opened my eyes as to how dominant, because the Chinese don't offer what's a very good product now, but they pull along their finance packages. And finance is unfortunately the key element to any of these capital goods, whether it's mining or whether it's industrial or whether it's transport or any other solution. I think this is going to be a challenge for European manufacturers and anybody else that's trying to get involved within the region.
Michael Mbewe, Channel Africa News, Johannesburg.
All right, as we make our way to 8 o'clock Central African time, a very good morning to you. This is Rise and Shine here on Channel Africa. My name is Asanda Beda. If you've just joined us, later on in the show, we talk about the Africa Tech Festival 2025. This is going to be taking place from the 11th to 13th of November. And we find out what that's about and what can be expected in this year's edition of that gathering. Lots more coming up, of course. Let's start with our news now. Here is Matapelo Mahape, and then Fikile Lingwati will follow with sports headlines.
SABC News. The African Perspective.
Thank you, Asanda, and good morning. Starting off with this story, the authorities in Tanzania have declared a curfew in the commercial capital, Dar es Salaam, after a tense election day. Several people were injured in clashes between demonstrators and police. The police curfew started at 6 p.m. local time, and the U.S. Embassy has advised American government personnel to take shelter at their residences. President Samia Suluhu Hassan is widely expected to win a second term after two top opposition candidates were disqualified from running, raising the ire of protesters. Internet services have also been disrupted across the country. And the head of the World Health Organization, WHO, says that the agency has received reports that more than 460 civilians have been killed at a hospital in Sudanese city of Al-Shafir. Tedros Ghebreyesus says that the organization is appalled and deeply shocked by the reports. It follows accusations by Sudanese Doctors Network that the paramilitary rapid support forces killed patients and abducted health workers in Al-Shafir yesterday. The head of the Norwegian Refugee Council, Jan Egeland, called on Sudan the world's largest emergency.
It's become such a bitter conflict, and it's defenseless people that are slaughtered. It is absolutely horrific because it's hundreds of thousands of people's lives at stake. It's the largest displacement crisis, the largest humanitarian crisis, the largest emergency on earth today.
And Cameroon's opposition leader, Issa Chitroma Bakary, has vowed to resist until the final victory over President Paul Biya and urged his supporters to remain mobilized. Biya, the world's oldest state leader, has ruled Cameroon since 1982. His election victory has deepened tensions in the cocoa and oil-producing nation, where critics accuse him of using state institutions to cling to power. Supporters of Bakary, a former government spokesperson turned Biya rival, have taken to the streets. A civil society group called Stand Up for Cameroon reported at least 23 deaths due to security forces cracking down on protesters since the weekend. And on to this now, the South African Human Rights Commission, SAHRC, has acknowledged that it needs to follow up on its recommendations to ensure they are properly implemented. There's been a concern that the public is losing trust in the Commission due to the lack of implementation of recommendations as it celebrates its 30th anniversary. SAHRC Commissioner Sandra Makausha says that the celebration serves as an opportunity to reflect on the work done over the years and to identify areas that require improvement.
We've heard from several organizations again criticizing the Commission for its absence and its shortcomings, but also then providing us with solutions for us to implement going forward. But also as part of the 30th, we're honoring those who have, contributed immensely to human rights, our human rights defenders in South Africa. So hence I'm saying there's a lot of work, also speaking about the fact that we still, in terms of international and regional interactions regarding human rights, South Africa, the South African Human Rights Commission has been at the center of several developments in the region and internationally.
And the Hurricane Melissa has continued its devastating sweep across the Caribbean, decimating homes and infrastructure, flooding in neighborhoods and leaving dozens dead. The impact in Jamaica was clearer on Wednesday after the island nation was targeted squarely by the Category 5 monster, one of the most powerful hurricanes ever measured in the region. At least 5 people have been confirmed dead there. At least another 20 died during flooding in Haiti as Melissa, now a Category 2 storm, tears through the region. In Jamaica, people remain stranded on roofs and without power. Prime Minister Andrew Holness noted the total devastation across the island nation. For any news stories you'd like to share with us, please send an email to newsroom@channelafrica.co.za or call us on +2711 714 4459. For Channel Africa News, I am Matapala Mahape.
SABC News. The African Perspective.
In a sports headline, FIA has been taken to court to block Ben Sulayem's uncontested candidacy. Amachimbo's head coach has finally announced his World Cup squad. I'll be back with these and other stories at the bottom of the hour.
Wake up, Africa. Peter Ndoro and Asanda Beda are here to help you rise and shine. Weekdays, 6 till 9 a.m. Central African Time. Only on Channel Africa.
Right, a conversation that was started by our colleague Peter yesterday. This is about Agatha Utauri. She was abducted in broad daylight in Tanzania, held in Communicado for days, beaten, threatened, and experiencing various forms of abuse, all for standing up for democracy and human rights. Ugandan journalist and activist Agatha Utauri tells us her story of how she was abused in Tanzania. In part one, yesterday's conversation with Agatha, Peter she shared her story, her early years and what happened in her activism years. And today it's our second installment, and she takes us back to that police station to recount what happened behind those walls when her and activist Boniface Mwangi were detained without charge, with legal counsel that was ineffective and without any explanation in a Tanzanian police station. What followed was a harrowing period of interrogations, intimidation, and uncertainty as she and her colleague Boniface Mwangi were questioned about their activism and ties to opposition movements. Let's take a listen.
So they take Boniface. I write about it on Twitter. We go to court. The rest of us go to court. At that moment, we were expecting to be joined by two former Chief Justices of Kenya, Willie Mutunga and David Maraga. Willie Mutunga arrives at the airport at around 8 a.m. with two activists, Hanifa and Hussein, and they were denied entry. So Maraga was supposed to arrive at 9 a.m. Surprisingly, we are in court and Maraga enters in. And of course, Tundu Lissu is very happy to see us. It's someone who is in jail, but sees that not only his people, but the people of the region are standing with him. And the court proceedings went on smoothly. The court was full. It was full. We were introduced by the lawyers of Tundu Lissu as a delegation from East Africa that is here. There was a delegation from the diplomatic community. They introduced them, and the court went on. I think there were about 3 cases that were being had that day against Tundu Lissu. So that's what I usually do. My job is to give information. So I kept writing about what's happening. I kept writing about what's happening, the security deployment, the masked men that were all over the place, and whatever. I kept reporting it on X. And that was
so you were posting in real time at this stage?
Yes, yes.
Okay, and clearly they've been monitoring you since your arrival, I'm guessing.
I don't know. So that's also part of my ignorance about that about Tanzania. So I think that I come from a country that I thought was the most dictatorial. So I never expect, and I can do that here. I attend Kizza Besige's case all the time. So I report about it all the time. So I thought, this should be okay. It's not that I am writing any lies, whatever. I'm just writing what is happening. So we leave the court at around 1 p.m. And outside the court, Chief Justice Maraga and a veteran journalist in Tanzania, Generali Ulimwengu, address the press. Then after that, we go back to the hotel. But all along through the court proceedings, I was in touch with Boniface's wife, and Boniface had gotten a way of keeping in touch with her, I think, through the lawyer's phone. So he had told her that they were charging him with contravening Section 45 of the Immigration Act. I read about it. It was talking about entering illegally or entering under false information or something like that. So they were saying he had given false information. about the reason he came to Tanzania. But she also tells me that Boniface says they will come for you. The first thing was that they had seen someone who is writing updates of the proceedings, but also that they wanted to find out from me where Boniface's gadgets were, his phone and his laptop. So I actually had found out about Boniface's phone around that time when the wife said that. I said, oh, by the way, did Boniface leave anyone with his phones? And one of the lawyers said, yeah, I have them. So we are having lunch and they come back. They come back with Boniface. These are plain-clothed officers, and they come and say they want to check my room because they had come to ask for CCTV footage, and the hotel had given it, and they had seen that I have that I moved with Boniface's bag to my room. So generally, when asks them what the actual issue is, and they say we are, it's routine. We need to check her room. We need to, and still we say okay, that's okay. I go with them to my room. I tried to open the room. It wasn't opening. They had already ordered security to block it. So they bring a security guy that makes another card and we access the room. And I show them Boniface's bag. Boniface is there. They tell him to open it, and they didn't find what they're looking for in that bag. So they ask for mine. They ask for my phone. I give them my phone, and they ask for my bag. And when they didn't find Boniface's phone, they asked for my passport as well. And they started going through my passport, and one of the officers started taking photos of the visas in my passport. And so the lawyer asks him, because we were now still with a few lawyers, I think 2 or 3, why are you taking photos of the visas or of the passport pages? And of course they do not answer, but so they started to look at each other or tell each other about, oh, how does she travel to all these countries or something like that. And I asked them how that is a problem. But long story short, the matter escalates, and I am told to pack my bag and come with them as well.
So at this point, tell me what's going on in your mind at this point. Because for as long as you're at the hotel, there is an air of safety, I guess. But now you're being taken by the police to their territory.
I was still feeling safe. We had lawyers. I thought lawyers are useful in Tanzania. So I was still feeling safe that we have lawyers. They will go ask us questions and bring us back, you know. So we went to the immigration's office. That's where we were being taken. And there, the questions were neither here nor there. There was a question about why did you come to Tanzania? I said, what do you mean? I have come to Tanzania many times before. We are all citizens of the East African community. So when did it become a crime to come to Tanzania? Why are you attending the Tundu Lissu's case? Can you attend a case of someone charged with treason in your country? I said, yes, I attend it every day. My job requires that I attend it. So we have someone also charged with treason whose court cases I attend all the time. I said, in fact, I'm supposed to attend the next one tomorrow. And then the more I answered, the more angry they were getting that I answered them. So I don't know if they were asking so that I keep quiet. Then they go through my passport. Why do you travel to all these places? What did you do? How do you make your money? So at some point I said, I'd like to know what issue I've been brought here to address, because at this point I do not understand whether it's about my coming to Tanzania, whether it's about Tundu Lissu, whether it's about my travel to other places. And they get more and more angry and they ask for my phone. I give it to them. They ask me if I have a ticket to take me back. I show it to them. So now at this moment, I am thinking they want to deport me, to send me back home because they're asking me for my ticket. They had already asked me to come with my bag, so I had as if checked out of the hotel. So things just kept getting worse. I think they made calls and they were waiting for a higher order. So they asked me to wait in another room. They had by this time assigned me a female officer to keep sitting with me. I go to that other room. It's 3 p.m. now. I sit there. I had moved with a book, so I was reading a book because I even had no phone to even inform people we left at the hotel. They were holding, they were having Boniface in another room. That's where Boniface had the 2 lawyers. So it's coming to 6 p.m. I'm asking what's going on. I'm asking if I can make a call, and I'm being told you cannot. Now, I think when I started to be afraid is when they came to say that they are taking us from that office to somewhere else. It's now coming to 7. I was in a skirt. I went to the bathroom and put on jeans and put on my sweater because I started to think it's going to be a long night. But also not long that I thought what would happen would happen. Long as I thought we might be detained all night or something. So we are picked up, and now the officers are even more. There's an officer that had come in and held Boniface by the neck and said, you know, I can slap you. But all this while, there were subtle threats. Someone in the lift tells Boniface, you know, they should give you to me for just 1 hour, and all that arrogance would go away. They would see our response and not fearing to respond to them as arrogance. And I also later learned that that's how Tanzanians are, especially if you're speaking English. For me, it was worse because I do not speak Swahili. And they would try to speak Swahili, and I would say I do not speak Swahili. So that's how we are taken to the Central Police Station. And now we are checked in, we write in the book, they take our bags from us, and they lead us to an office. I am kept in the waiting area, but Boniface is taken in, and I am still reading my book. At that moment, it's 7:30 about. After a few minutes in office with Boniface and the lawyers come. But all this time, I had realized that the lawyers cannot respond to a police officer or an immigration officer. They fear them. Wow. Yeah, I don't speak Swahili, but I can hear a bit of it. So you could say they are just submitting and saying, okay, sir, you know. So the lawyers come out without Boniface, and they tell me that they have been dismissed. That the police officer there, who we later learned is called Mafere, that he had told them to leave, and we are going to be detained overnight.
At this stage, all you thought was detention and then deportation, I'm guessing.
Yeah, yes. That's what my thought was.
Yeah.
So I asked the lawyers, how can you be told, be dismissed by police officers? But also, how do they tell you we are being detained overnight when up to this moment, we don't know what charge they are holding us here for? But it's at this stage that I realized that the lawyers there are powerless. And because as he's still talking to me, that police officer Mafere comes and shouts at him to leave and says, unless you want me to detain you as well. So I tell the lawyer that before you leave, can you ask for me my phone to make a phone call? I need to make sure my children have come from school, you know, things that I thought I would coordinate with the phone. So Mafere tells him something in Swahili, and when this guy is attempting to tell me Mafele cuts him short and says, stop lying to her. Tell her exactly what I said. Banali says, let me tell you myself. We do not care about your children. We are not going to give you a phone to make any phone call. We do not care about your children. We are not the ones that told you to leave your children and come to Tanzania where you were uninvited. Okay, so my jaw dropped. I was shocked. I was shocked. He turned and left before I could respond, but I wanted to respond. I wanted to ask him if where he was at work, he had carried his children with him. But he leaves, so he chases the lawyers. So I tell the lawyers before they leave that why don't you alert the people who are with? Because I was expecting that if senior lawyers like former Chief Justice Maraga and General Limengu came to the police station, they would be able to ask the questions these hadn't asked. What are we being charged with? What are we detained for? So now this guy says, we are now going back to the Serena to brief them. And I think he was, and those lawyers, I keep wondering whether it was incompetence or connivance or both, because they didn't handle the situation well, especially for people that are Tanzanian that knew what would happen. So after they leave, I'm also summoned in that office. It is like a boardroom where there are about 6 officers, including the immigration officers we came with from immigration office. And the guy that had come, I think, with this order who claimed to come from State House, the one that was threatening and assaulting Boniface. And then at the head of that table is Mafele, the guy that I'm told was the zone or whatever of investigations at the Central Police Station. So Mafele asks me, oh, I hear you're a journalist. I will teach you a lesson and you will go back to Uganda and write an interesting story about Tanzania. Wow. I think I'm still not getting it very well. I mean, I still do not know the extent this could go. So he asks, do you have children? And this is a question many of them had asked also. I say, yeah. So I say, I don't know how it is connected to this, but if you must know, I have children. Said, how many? I said, 2. Said, do you want a 3rd one? I said, no, I don't. If I wanted a 3rd one, I'd have them say, I wanted to make sure you leave Tanzania with a 3rd one or something like that. Wow. And I had already now seen that that's a rape threat. So they tell us to leave the office and they tell us to sit where I was seated in the waiting area. By this time, they have collected our books from us. The book I was reading while I wait, and Boniface's Mafele had them. So like, this is an insecure guy that even reading a book bothers him, you know? Anyway, so we go back to sit outside, and now this is the first time I'm seated with Boniface ever since they brought us from the hotel. And Boniface tells me, Agatha, we are going to die. They are going to kill us. So I think he's exaggerating. I think by this time I had thought that, okay, they'll slap us a bit in the detention overnight, but it can't be that bad. And Boniface says they are going to kill us, and my biggest problem with that is that we are going to die such a senseless death because we are actually dying for no reason. I would rather it was in Uganda where I had.
Did you believe that you were going to die for real?
I still thought Boniface was exaggerating, but he had picked on a lot of information that I hadn't. For someone who speaks Swahili, he had spoken to a few people that the junior people that he was with earlier. So I still thought that we might be in trouble, but not die. But after he's said this, maybe 5 minutes after that, young people, about 6 young people come in well-built young men, could be in their 30s, I think, very well built. They are not in any uniform. They are in plain clothes, and there was a woman among them. So it was 5 young men and 1 young woman. So they passed by us in the waiting area and go to that office. Now, when I saw them, something told me these are the people they have brought to deal with us. So now I got scared.
Wow.
So they were in that office for a few minutes. Then they came out. They came out around 5 to 10 minutes later, and they ordered us to come with them. Now, by this time, I have 2 women assigned to me. One plain-clothed woman from the immigration office, and a woman in uniform that had started also staying close to me at the police station. So this woman in uniform tries to follow us, and they are taking us through the basement, not the way we had come through.
Wow.
Tries to follow us, and she's ordered to stay back. Now, as they are taking us, I am scared. You can't run. They are 6, but also it's in a building. You don't know where to run to and whatever. So
the
I think
the female officer was told to stay behind, and now you were just with 5 men.
And a woman, because their crew has a woman as
Right,
well,
right.
who hasn't part of these other officers.
Okay.
So we are surrounded. 2 are in front, 3 are behind. 4 are behind us. So we find a car waiting. It's a Land Cruiser, a white Land Cruiser, and we are ordered to go in. Where they want me to sit, there were guns, and they remove them. I sit, and immediately they put us in. They put Boniface behind, in the behind seats that are like the boot, those seats that are folded and whatever. So once we are in, they blindfold us.
Wow.
The woman tried to blindfold me, but as she's fidgeting, the man from behind where they were holding Bonnie gets the blindfold from her and violently ties it around my face, very violently. And this is when I am scared, to the point of I almost had a panic attack. They closed the doors. The car was already dark. It is tinted glasses, tinted windows, and they drive off. So it's the first time I'm being blindfolded. And the blindfold wasn't that whatever that they put all over your face, it was just for the eyes. But it felt like I was suffocating. I felt like I couldn't breathe. I felt like I really couldn't breathe. So
did this start to feel like an abduction now? Or
yes,
it had now gone beyond normal legal processes?
Already, by the time we are being led by these dogs, I knew this was now an abduction.
Wow.
So when we are blindfolded, I am scared. I am panicking. I am feeling like that despair of, I hope someone can save us. And you're thinking, but will someone save us? Can anyone save us? We are in Tanzania.
Agatha Autwari, a journalist, activist, and lawyer, sharing her story of abduction by Tanzanian authorities. It was earlier this year. It took place when Agatha Atuhaire, along with Kenyan photojournalist Boniface Mwangi, were abducted in Tanzania while showing solidarity with opposition politician Tundu Lissu. That conversation with our colleague Peter Ndoro. You can catch that full interview on Channel Africa's podcast, so make sure you tune in for that. Tomorrow we'll be bringing you part 3 here on Rise and Shine of this conversation. It's now time for our news headlines. Let's say good morning again to Matapelo Mahape.
SABC News. Headlines. The African Perspective.
Thank you, Asanda. Headlines this hour. Tanzania's elections are set to be announced in 3 days, with President Samia Suluhu Hassan expected to win a second term. A tense day saw scores injured in clashes with police, and the U.S. Embassy advised American government personnel to shelter. And Nigeria has passed a new bill imposing fines and jail terms on wildlife traffickers, aiming to curb organized crime networks linked to over 30 tons of ivory and half of global Pangolian-scale trafficking. And partners and children of Gazan students coming to study in the UK will now be able to join them, marking a reversal of the original policy which only supported the evacuation of the students themselves. More details on these and other stories at top of the hour.
SABC News. Headlines. The African Perspective.
Fikile Ngwati is now up next to take us through the world of sports in terms of what's happening in the latest there. Good morning.
Sports on Channel Africa. The African Perspective.
Good morning, Asanda. We begin with motor racing. Swiss racing driver Laura Villas filed legal action against motorsports governing body to challenge FIA election rules, which she argues prevent her or any other candidate from running against incumbent President Mohammed Ben Sulayem. The legal summons seen by AFP requests a Paris court to order the suspension of the FIA presidential election until a ruling is made over the dispute. The election is due on the 12th of December and a court hearing has been set for the 10th of November. Election regulations amended in June by the current leadership require candidates to appoint vice presidents from each of the 6 global regions chosen from a list approved by the FIA. On to football news. South Africa's under-17 men's national football team, the Amajimbos coach Vela Kumalo, has confirmed his final squad for the upcoming FIFA Under-17 World Cup in Qatar amid reports of turbulent preparations. The Under-17 World Cup will be held in Qatar from the 3rd to the 27th of November. The late squad announcement has been viewed as a reflection of off-field challenges during the build-up to the tournament. Head coach Kumalo's side has been placed in Group A, where they will come up against host Qatar, Italy and Bolivia. Notably, none of these teams featured in the previous edition in the 2023 and will now hope to make an impact. This marks South Africa's first appearance at the Under-17 World Cup since 2015 and their 4th qualification through the AFCON knockout stages. The Amajimbos will open their campaign at the tournament on the 3rd of November before taking on Qatar on the 6th of November. Then they will wrap up their group stage campaign with a final match against Italy on the 9th of November. Cricket news. Proteas right arm bowler Marizanne Kapp etched her name into cricketing history, becoming the ICC Women's World Cup's all-time leading wicket taker with a 44th scalp, surpassing the legendary Julaine Goswami. Her fiery spell of 520 dismantled England's top order, including clean bowling both Amy Jones and Heather Knight for Ducks. At the other end, Captain Laura Volvaert delivered one of the greatest innings ever seen on this stage, anchoring South Africa's charge with a masterful knock that powered the Proteas women to a commanding 125-run victory in yesterday's semi-final. Kapp credits the team's composure for their victory.
There was a calmness in the group this morning for some reason. We just felt like what will happen will happen. And yeah, I think once we lost the toss, I was actually happy that we batted first. Just looking at the stats of this ground and how it's been going this World Cup, I feel like they probably felt like they were going to roll us over like we did in the first game against them. But I feel like our 2 openers set it up beautifully for us to come in and just play our natural game.
Finally, with tennis news, Italian Jannik Sinner began his tilt at the Paris Masters crown, which would return him to world number 1 with a 6-4, 6-2 win over Zizou Beggs, while reigning champion Alexander Zverev belted through a lengthy 3-setter. Following the surprise exit of world number 1 Carlos Alcaraz at the round of 32 stage on Tuesday, a maiden crown in the ATP 1000 event in the French capital would return Sinner to the summit of the world rankings. He will next take on Spanish 15th seed Alejandro Davidovich Fokina following his victory over Frenchman Arthur Cazaux. For any sports stories you'd like to share with us, please send an email to newsroom@channelafrica.co.za or call us on +2711 714 4459. This is Channel Africa Sport with me, Figure Ngwati.
Sports on Channel Africa. The African perspective.
Africa, voici Abedi.
Oui, c'est moi.
Abedi est un passionné de musique dans l'âme. Il a un goût pour toutes sortes de musique et passe ses journées à écouter Channel Africa.
J'aime beaucoup la musique africaine.
Ok. Devinez quoi? Channel Africa veut aider Abedi et les mélomanes du monde entier à découvrir encore plus de musique incroyable. C'est pourquoi Channel Africa appelle les artistes africains à soumettre leur musique. Chers artistes, n'oubliez pas de nous fournir toutes vos informations pertinentes à l'email adresse musique@channelafrica.co.za. Les soumissions sont votre chance d'être entendues, mais elles ne garantissent pas une playlist. Toutes les soumissions seront soigneusement examinées pour voir si elles répondent aux exigences de notre station. Channel Africa, la perspective africaine. Parlez-vous couramment le français? Êtes-vous passionné par la radio? Et êtes-vous qualifié pour travailler en Afrique du Sud? Envoyez-nous votre CV et vos 3 minutes démo en MP3 à @channelafrica.co.za pour avoir une chance de rejoindre la famille Channel Africa. Si vous n'avez pas de réponse après 14 jours, cela signifie que vous n'avez pas été retenu. Channel Africa, la perspective africaine.
Call us on +27 63 406 9126 and contribute to the conversation.
Let's find out what's happening in the world of business. Here's Tabisole Hugo to get us an update. Good morning.
Business news on Channel Africa. The African perspective.
Thanks, Asanda, and good morning. The National Union of Metal Workers of South Africa, NUMSA, is expected to march to the National Treasury in Pretoria tomorrow. The union is demanding government to stop conducting a business with the private sector companies that are reportedly not complying with collective agreements. NUMSA spokesperson Paramila Hlubi-Majola says it's a disgrace that workers in the security sector must protest for what is lawfully and rightfully theirs. Hlubi-Majola revealed that security companies are defrauding workers by deducting money for medical insurance and a pension fund, but not paying it over to the service provider. She says that they will be handing over a memorandum of demands.
Security companies are defrauding workers by deducting money for medical insurance and pension fund, but not paying it over to the service provider. This means that when workers have to claim for medical insurance or pension fund, there are not enough funds or no funds at all.
BMW South Africa and Opel Astra SA are recalling some of its vehicles due to seat belts and the driver airbag inflator not manufactured correctly. The National Consumer Commission says it has received recall notifications from both motor vehicle companies. The Commission's Petundaba says the BMW is recalling just over 70 vehicles, while Stellantis are recalling Opel Astra H models manufactured between 2004 and 2006, as well as the J models manufactured from 2009 to 2015.
BMW South Africa is recalling a total of 75 vehicles, 1 Series, 2 Series, X1 as well as X2. According to the manufacturer, one of the seat belts in the affected vehicles may not have been manufactured correctly. On the other hand, Stellantis South Africa, they are recalling Opel Astra J and Opel Astra H, which were made available from 2004 to 2015.
The South African Social Security Agency has refuted claims that beneficiaries will be receiving double payment for their social grants. The agency's spokesperson, Andile Chona, has urged beneficiaries not to entertain information that doesn't come from credible sources.
SASSA would like to state that this is not true, and that as SASSA we urge all our beneficiaries and the public at large not to entertain this misinformation, as there has been no announcement of social grants double payment by SASSA or government.
Nigeria's parliament has approved President Bola Tinubu's request to borrow 2.85 billion US dollars from international debt markets, including the country's first ever issuance of a sovereign sukuk. Tinubu has asked Parliament after this month to approve new international borrowing and authorize issuance of a 500 million US dollar debut sovereign sukuk. Tinubu says that the new funds would be used for part finance the budget deficit and refinance maturing Eurobonds due in November. Chinese shares have climbed to a decade high as US President Donald Trump and President Xi Jinping of China began a high-stakes meeting, fueling cautious optimism for a potential trade war truce that will help sustain bullish market sentiment. Investors appeared heartened by early signs of cooling tensions between the world's top two economies after recent escalations, while also positioning defensively with a sense of déjà vu that the real deal may offer far less to celebrate. The benchmark Shanghai Composite Index reversed early losses, rising as much as 0.2% in morning trading, reaching its highest since 2015, driven by hopes for de-escalation in the US-China trade dispute. $1 in Nigeria is trading at 1,452 naira. In Botswana, it's at 13.87. Kenya, 128 shillings, 372. And Zambia, 21 kwacha 94. The BRICS countries in Brazil, the dollar is trading at 5.35. Russia, 79 rubles 55. India, 88 rupees 22. China, 71.9. And in South Africa, the dollar will cost you 17 rand 13 cents. 75 pence to the British pound and 85 to the euro. Gold is trading at $3,938 and platinum $1,586 per ounce. Brent crude oil is at $64.55 a barrel. For any business stories you would like to share with us, please send us an email to newsroom@channelafrica.co.za or call us on +27 11 714 4459. For Channel Africa Business in Johannesburg, I'm Tebisolo Hoko.
Business news on Channel Africa. The African perspective. Your morning companion with the stories that matter. This is Rise and Shine on Channel Africa.
Malawi's Department of National Parks and Wildlife, in partnership with African Parks, has introduced contraceptives to control the growing lion population in 2 of the country's major wildlife reserves. The measure is aimed at preventing overpopulation, protecting biodiversity, and reducing human-wildlife conflicts. Channel Africa's Lebogang Mabange has more.
The Department of National Parks and Wildlife says the contraceptive program currently being implemented at Majete and Liwonde wildlife reserves comes as a response to the increasing number of lions in the 2 parks. Director of the department, Brighton Kumchedwa, explains how the situation came about.
First of all, what you need to know is that lions are fast breeders, and the Malawi government, in partnership with African Parks, embarked on restocking depleted areas. Therefore, lions were reintroduced in these 2 parks, but within a short time period of space, they have grown to the extent, the population has grown to the extent that it was posing some challenges. For example, depletion of the prey species.
Kumchedwa says the increasing number of lions has resulted in some animals moving out of the reserves in search of food, putting nearby communities at risk.
When there's not enough prey species, you get these lions getting out into communities, injuring or killing people as well as livestock. So, consideration of making sure that there is no biological imbalance, but also taking the decision was to integrate communities for their survival.
He says the contraceptive method being used is humane and poses no harm to the animals.
This method is very safe because, one, is non-lethal. So it was considered to be humane to the animals. And the veterinary procedures are also applied when administering these drugs. For example, it involves darting of the animals, it involves inserting implant at the proper abdominal position to make sure that this is not longer pressed. So far, so good, because from the time we started administering contraceptives, we have not witnessed deaths as a result of the drugs.
Kumcherwa further explains how long the contraceptive effects last and how they are managed over time.
These contraceptives are scheduled on period. I said for 5 years, but the correct period of these drugs is 2 years. That means they're treated with the implants for a period of 2 years. The production will be depressed, and indeed, this is what is happening. But after 2 years, the reproductive systems go back to its normal way. This is just to ensure that at the same time, enough predators are available by not overdoing application of the drugs.
He says the reserves are fenced to minimize potential human-wildlife conflict.
Fortunately, though, the two protected areas of Liwonda and Majete, they have perimeter fences. So the effects on the surrounding communities very, very minimal. Measures to make sure that they do not affect negatively the surrounding communities. We have perimeter fences, predator-proof perimeter fences in some of our national parks, and indeed Majete and Luonde totally enclosed.
Malawi has recorded an increase in human-wildlife conflicts in recent years, with 19 people reported dead and several injured between January and October this year. Authorities hope this temporary measure will help stabilize lion populations while protecting both biodiversity and nearby communities. Reporting for Channel Africa, I am Lebogang Mabange.
Let the good times roll. From the 10th of October, make a note. Channel Africa is stepping into a brand new era with the launch of our upgraded website and app. It's easy, fresh, and always on your fingertips. Wherever you are in the world, Africa's voice is just a click away. The future of Channel Africa goes live from the 10th of October. Don't miss the moments. From Cape to Cairo, Dakar to Dar es Salaam, rise and shine with Peter Ndoro and Asanda Beda on Channel Africa.
The Africa Tech Festival, or ATF 2025, will take place from 11 to 13 November 2025 as part of an ongoing thought leadership drive for policy, dialogue, investment and innovation across the continent's tech ecosystem. ATF is more than an annual event, but a year-round platform with a Pan-African impact. To unpack this impact and the festival's 2025 strategic ambition, we're joined now by Kadi Diallo, who is Portfolio Manager at Informa. Kadi, thank you for joining us. Good morning.
Good morning to you. Thank you so much for having me.
It's our pleasure. Give us more background on the Africa Tech Festival, or the ATF, how long it's been impacting the continent's tech landscape and your involvement within it.
Thank you so much. So Africa Tech Festival, or ATF, is really the continent flagship technology and digital transformation event. It's been running for close to 3 decades now. And over that time, it's evolved from a telecoms-focused conference into a major platform that celebrates Africa's entire digital ecosystem. So we talk about topics from connectivity to cloud to fintech, AI, startups, and policy. And every year it brings together government leaders, investors, entrepreneurs, and innovators from across Africa and the world, all in one place to shape the continent's digital future.
In what ways does ATF continue to drive Pan-African engagement, attract global investment, and shape technology narratives across those key growth markets?
So ATF really plays a unique role because it connects the dots across borders. It's one of the very few spaces where policymakers from different African countries meet directly with investors, tech giants, and startups, which means real collaboration can happen and not just talking about it. So the festival kind of like helps attract global investment by showcasing Africa's innovation story through various channels. We have a Africa Ignite event focusing on the startup ecosystem and has a startups exhibition zones where basically entrepreneurs get to pitch to investors from Europe, the US, Asia, and other African markets. So when we talk about shaping the narrative, ATF really ensures that Africa's voice is heard globally instead of just being viewed as a passive market. So the focus is on Africa as a driver of innovation, building solutions that respond to a local needs as well as having global relevance.
On the continent, concerns have been raised around security when it comes to digital atmospheres. So how will the ATF Agenda 2025 address Africa's pressing digital trust and security challenges?
Mm-hmm. So this year's agenda really zeroes in on the digital trust and cybersecurity aspects. We also have a dedicated event agenda called the Cybersecurity and Cloud Resilience Stage. Because as Africa's digital economy grows, so do the risks from data breaches to infrastructure attacks. And without trust, people and businesses simply won't be able to engage online, right? A secure digital infrastructure is the foundation for everything from financial inclusion to e-commerce, healthcare, and education. If systems aren't safe enough, users lose confidence and investors hesitate. So that's why at ATF 2025, sessions will look at how to strengthen cybersecurity defense, improving regulation, and build capacity, ensuring our growth is trustworthy and sustainable.
On that same point, as things stand, talk to us through the importance of regulation on governance and that private-public collaboration when it comes to securing Africa's digital economy.
Very, very good question. Digital transformation can't really happen in silos, right? So, because governments set the rules, but the private sector builds and operates most of that infrastructure. That's why it's so important to focus on the collaboration aspect, from harmonizing data protection laws to improving cyber incident reporting and ensuring fair access to spectrum and fiber infrastructure is enabled. So that's what we're trying to do at ATF, is to create the right environment for these conversations to happen. Regulators, ministers, and business leaders share the same stage, discussing how policy can enable innovation rather than just slowing down. Because good government and regulation builds investors' confidence, and that's what ultimately drives sustainable growth.
So what would you say are the top needs for the continent's rapid digital expansion as things stand? Can you give us an overview?
Yes, of course, yeah. We believe that there are a few big priorities. Number one, infrastructure. More data centers, more affordable connectivity, and stronger networks reaching rural areas. So all of the unconnected or connected. Skills. We need a workforce that's digitally fluent and able to secure and scale these technologies when they happen. Investment is another one. We need more venture and growth capital to help local innovation scale across borders. Number four, is of course cybersecurity and trust, because without safety online, adoption is going to slow down. And the last one would be the inclusive access, making sure that women, the youth, and rural communities are part of that digital economy. So in short, we need the pipes, the people, the money, the trust, and the inclusion. And ATF is one of the few places that brings all of those conversations once again together.
So, and fostering a sense of trust amongst the leaders in this conversation, how does ATF use itself as a tool in doing that, advancing conversations around trust, around innovation and sustainable digital transformation amongst leaders?
Mhm. So you said it perfectly in your opening line. In your opening line, ATF isn't just a conference; it's really a cross-sector ecosystem in action. It has roundtable discussion, ministerial forum discussion, C-suite dialogues, startup pitches, and investors matchmaking, all happening simultaneously, because the right people are in the room, whether they are policymakers, CEOs, innovators, investors. The discussion don't stay theoretical. Partnership and policy are born out of those sessions. The 2025 team of the overall festival is centered around responsible innovation, inclusive investment, and policy harmonization, which really captures that mission: building a connected, secured, and inclusive digital Africa.
So, where will the gathering be held? Is there still space for those who want to participate to register?
Absolutely, there is this place. The event will be taking place from the 11th to the 10th of November in Cape Town at the CTICC International Center. You can still register. We actually have a code where you can secure your free pass called Radio 25 in one word, Radio RADIO 25, where you can register at africatechfestival.com to find out more, view the agenda, or sign up for passes. There are options for general attendance, startup showcases, and even features and networking opportunity to attend. So Cape Town that week will be the heartbreak of Africa's tech scene. So everyone is invited.
Awesome. Thank you so much again for your time and shedding light on this and educating us. And I'm sure you'll have safe travels as you move from the UK to South Africa in the coming days. Thanks, Kadi.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye. Kadi Diallo is Portfolio Manager at Informa, talking to us about the upcoming Africa Tech Festival 2025. So that's our last live chat for today on Rise and Shine. But coming up is On the Move, and Benjamin joins us to tell us what can we expect. Give us a snippet, sir.
Let's give you a bit of a snippet of what's coming up. How are you doing?
I'm good, thanks. How are you?
Good. Well, we're going to be touching on something wonderful. You know, our first hour conversations are usually kind of dynamic. We always kind of try find interesting things to talk about. And this one is a powerful conversation. It's, you know, the older you get, relationships have a different kind of touch to them, right? And I'm speaking about old, maybe post 50, 55, 60. And maybe you start a new relationship at that time.
Because your partner is deceased, or it could be divorce, right?
Yeah. Or any reasons. Maybe you've been single all your life, and the only time you've really found a great relationship because of that time of your life is at that particular age. How does that look like? Because it doesn't mean growing older that you lose that interest, or it's an era where the door is closed when it comes to love. Do you think it's possible?
It is possible. There's a documentary
I love how
I was
you
watching.
smile. Like it's like a sweet smile. You should see Asanda smile.
I think it's possible. There's a documentary I was watching. I think it's called The Later Daters or something. And everybody there is over 50 looking for a partner. So they between the ages of 50 and 70. I think the eldest was like 75, if I remember correctly.
Yeah.
And they just still look like young teenagers. They're wanting to fall in love. But obviously the requirements that they say as far as what they want in relationships are completely different from what maybe a 22-year-old would want. But they also go through the struggles that every younger person goes through.
Absolutely. So we're going to be speaking about that, romance after loss, forming a deep friendship that could blossom into love, sharing interests. Sometimes that's the main thing for this group of lovers, that you know, they can meet at a jazz club or meet at a chess game, and that's how they form that particular bond. So we'll chat a little bit more about how we take that for granted, but it's actually something that happens in our everyday lives.
Yeah, I wish we'd change the narrative that when it comes to men dating at that age, it's more acceptable than when it's the woman. She gets judged.
I know. I've judged my mom. Like, Mom, you're too old to get married. No, you can't get married again. No,
Please
you
change
belong
the
to me.
And then you're gonna leave her behind and get married now. It's your own thing. You're not fair.
I'm not fair.